We kick things off with our hero standing right in front of a massive, shimmering orb of green and yellow light, and after betting everything on one single wish, he reaches out to claim his fate. The moment Leon touches the orb, the Sage class glows to life, but his desperate attempt to swap it fails instantly because he hasn't met the crazy requirements. Back at the tavern, Leon pushes through the rowdy crowd and instantly locks eyes with the exact person he's been looking for. The Wolf Fang Squad, a holy knight and a straight-up wolf, spot him and immediately start grilling him for the full report on how things went down. He realizes he completely blew it, so the wolf honors their deal before coldly firing him on the spot, leaving the poor guy absolutely paralyzed with shock. He's desperately pleading with the leader to take it back, willing to do literally anything else, as the wolf suddenly remembers Leon's ultimatum. If he couldn't switch to a normal class, he was as good as fired. The rival boss completely folds, promising to do whatever they want even though his paycheck just got slashed. Just then, a girl barges in and shuts him up, assuming he's already figured out that he's just dead weight getting in their way. Enter Rebecca, a divine archer who snipes her enemies straight from the heavens. The master mage Lloyd backs her up, making it clear that if they keep playing bodyguard for Leon, they're never going to survive the road ahead. Then Chelsea, a literal professional killer, finally chimes in, wondering why the hero hasn't realized he's hit a dead end and just given up already. Leon throws out one last desperate plea, asking how they'll ever survive without him hauling their gear and patching their wounds, knowing damn well that finding someone else to do that thankless grunt work is next to impossible. He tries to flex his elite sword skills, but the wolf just scoffs, telling him the job's already been finished. He's already filled those spots, so Rebecca nudges Noelle to go say her goodbyes to the hero before he heads out. She walks right up to Leon, telling him it's time to say their goodbyes, but not before introducing herself as a priest named Noel and letting him know she was truly happy to meet him. She drops a massive bombshell, revealing she knows his secret identity and that the hero actually failed. But when she calls him a red magician, he's left completely stunned as she questions if he's finally hit a dead end in both his class and his overall potential. He confirms he's hit level 20 as a carrier, and out of nowhere, Noel just loses it and starts howling with laughter. She realizes he's maxed out his basic level and mocks him for it. But just as he's screaming about how god-tier his storage skill is, the wolf deadpans that he could have just used a regular bag. He keeps barking that there's no room for Leon or his wolf fang sword, so Leon hits the deck and buries his face in the floor in a total grovel. He desperately begs to stay behind, swearing he'll become a master at gear runs and deliveries, even though he's a total rookie who's never done it before. She screams that Leon is a grown man yet still acts like a total embarrassment, and the wolf is clearly fed up, clicking its tongue in pure annoyance, since they're rolling in enough gold to skip the haggling and just order whatever they need. The wolf heads off to set up the delivery spot, only to realize he hasn't even given the hero the green light to handle it yet. Leon recoils in terror, but the wolf suddenly clamps a hand on his shoulder, snarling that they've been dragging his dead weight for 2 whole years and asking if that isn't enough for him. They whisper a desperate plea for freedom, leaving Leon shivering on the tiles while Rebecca teases him, asking if he's really gonna cry like a little kid. Chelsea steps up to break the awkward silence, but Noelle starts cackling and mocks the hero for being a total kid, forcing Lloyd to step in and tell her to show some respect. Leon suddenly asks to be excused, dropping the bombshell that he's officially on the candidate list and needs to start crushing those requirements immediately. He spits on how useless it is and lets out a roar, swearing to grind until every last requirement is met before asking how many jobs are even left, hinting that their options are running bone dry. He stands there in dead silence, fighting to keep his emotions from boiling over, but the wolf just tells him to take a seat before dropping the bombshell that they're moving out, leaving Leon completely stunned. The waitress finally scrambles over with their meals and a quick apology, but the wolf cuts her off to announce they're ditching the city immediately. Just as he's about to dig into the treat, Leon lunges forward to stop him, but at this point, the group is straight up ignoring every word he says. Rebecca looks back at him, realizing he's been her ride or die since day one, and she finally pours her heart out to thank him for everything. Our hero's turning beet red, but Noelle just flashes a playful grin and tells him to start eating before his dinner goes ice cold, asking him if he's got the message. Lloyd's betting everything on his journey as an adventurer, knowing deep down their paths will cross again for one more chance to just sit back and laugh together. The squad turns to head out, but the wolf suddenly stops in its tracks, spinning back to Leon to give him one final warning to stay safe. Tears well up in our hero's eyes as he finally opens his heart, thanking them for every single thing they've sacrificed for him. After polishing off his meal and leaving the plate spotless, he heads over to the guild hall, which is already buzzing with a massive crowd. He strides up to the counter, and the receptionist is totally caught off guard seeing Leon show up in person, while our hero just scratches his head with a sheepish grin. She's absolutely beaming, convinced he's finally confessing his feelings, but he just bursts out laughing, thinking to himself that Miriam is just as bright and bubbly as ever. He realizes that even when she's just teasing, she's still a total sweetheart, but his sudden reaction catches her completely off guard. He just got the boot from his B-rank party, Wolf Fang, and thanks to those strict guild rules, his level 20 status means he's getting dragged all the way down to a measly temporary D rank. He warns our MC that the standards for temporary D ranks have plummeted, making it way easier to get demoted, before slapping down a bill for the information he just provided. He's completely blindsided and tries to double-check the facts, but when a stack of 1,000 galbas suddenly materializes, he loses his mind and starts screaming. Leon's trying to wrap his head around the situation, and Miriam reveals this is his reward for the intel, but she's blown away when he asks about the time interval like he's totally clueless. She finally drops some intel on those Wolf Fang sword goons, remembering that back during the ball blessing, Leon was actually flagged for a completely unknown class. He's totally on board, but then she drops a massive bombshell. He's already been paid a staggering 10 million galva because the Sage is a mysterious, unregistered class, leaving the hero absolutely floored by that insane payday. Ever since then, every time he hit level 15 or 20 and failed a class change, the guild actually cut him a check for 1 million galva, just for handing over all that top-secret data they'd never seen before. It finally clicks. The Wolf Fang Zord was never about honor, just cold, hard cash, and that's exactly why they shut him out from the start. He lays it all out. Hitting level 20 in every profession just got him kicked to the curb, and the betrayal is absolutely crushing him. He finally realizes he's no longer their easy cash cow, and his mind flashes back to the exact moment he started throwing his dignity away just to please them. She's tracking his every move, itching to make a play, until she finally decides to step out and completely derail his focus. She's 100% sure he's going to be just fine, pointing out that literally no other adventurer has ever managed to max out every single basic profession to level 20. Suddenly, Noelle's voice echoes in his head, warning him that maxing out basic stats is nothing to brag about. And Leon's blood starts to boil. She's laughing like it's the funniest thing ever, which starts to weird the girl out, until the hero suddenly loses his mind and screams, asking if she really gets that much of a kick out of making a total fool of him. She frantically tries to take it back with an apology, but it's too late. Leon's already convinced that everyone in this world is just looking down their noses at him. She starts frantically apologizing and begging him to just calm down, but she's cut off before she can even finish. He whips out his blade and starts hurling insults while lunging at Miriam, but a voice suddenly cuts through the air, warning him that weapons aren't toys just as Leon gets knocked out cold. The scene warps to a strange new room where our hero is already passed out on a bed, but he snaps his eyes open when he hears a voice calling his name, slowly shaking off the mental fog. A massive figure looms over Sifleon, asking if he's finally awake, and our hero loses it, grabbing a pillow and screaming in terror before realizing it's actually the guildmaster. Once he finally snaps back to reality, the man warns him to quit causing such a scene in the guild, telling him he's lucky things didn't end in a total disaster this time. Leon thinks it's all a prank until he's suddenly thrown into cuffs, but the vibe gets real when the master asks if he's actually the red magician from the wolf group. He actually doubles down, calling himself a total failure for botching his class change and ending up as a pathetic low-level scout stuck outside the tower. A sudden knock cuts the hero off mid-sentence, but he gives the okay to enter, revealing Miriam, who peeks inside before turning her gaze straight to Leon. He's actually doing just fine, but she's already apologizing for being so insensitive and for having the nerve to talk to him like they were just old pals. Our hero realizes he totally lost his cool and tries to apologize, but she shuts it down, swearing she'd never look down on him and begging him to trust her. He tries to act like everything is under control, but the man suddenly cuts him deep by calling him a pathetic, helpless kid. He heads toward the tower with the hero, but suddenly turns back and tells him to stay right on his heels. She tries to pull him back, questioning his sanity, but he refuses to leave a helpless child in danger and swears he'll be back before the sun goes down. He's right in the middle of saying he doesn't need help when, BAM! A guy whacks him over the head, shouting that the guildmaster ordered this red magician to shut up and follow him. Leon suits up for his research mission, only to realize they've stuck him with a bunch of outdated total junk equipment. He gives him a nod, saying that the red magician look fits him perfectly, just as the squad reaches the tower entrance and gets stopped cold by a guard. They're totally judging him by his looks, but the man just shrugs and says he's there to fix the hero's mistakes. Until the Guardian suddenly freezes, recognizing him as the legendary red magician from the Sword of the Wolf's Fang. The master warns him to never underestimate Leon's combat prowess now that he's a lone wolf, while the Guardian starts celebrating that he finally ditched the Wolf Fangzord team, assuming he's finally found peace. The guys are hyped to see just how far Leon can push himself, and after he reveals his temporary D rank status, the Guardian notes he can reach floor 35 even though D ranks usually cap at 30. So Leon decides to skip the easy stuff and dive straight into the 21st floor. They warp straight to the 21st floor, where he immediately asks if the hero can solo his way to the 30th. But catching the kid's stunned reaction, he realizes he's looking at a complete rookie who's never even been in a real fight. He promises to jump in if things get messy, giving our hero the ultimate safety net to charge into the fray with total confidence. They lunge at Leon, but he shreds through them effortlessly with his blade, leaving the man stunned by his skill just as they hit the 25th floor. When they ask how he's firing bullets with different elements, Leon just shrugs it off, flexes his level 20 black magician, and acts like it's the most obvious thing in the world. The master is seriously impressed by his elite swordsmanship and insane reflexes, but Leon admits that fighting solo is a total drain, making the old man wonder why he isn't just using support magic. She snaps back to reality, realizing the other fighters are waiting for her, and after a heavy silence, the man finally understands just how messy Leon's mindset has become. They head back, and the Guardian is dying to know how it went, but his jaw hits the floor when he hears Leon soloed his way to the 30th level in the blink of an eye. This guy is a total triple threat, mastering magic, close quarters combat, and every secret floor in the tower. The Guardian realizes only a pack of wolves could ever hold him back from superstardom, but Leon shuts him down, reminding him that he's just a lowly red mage. He calls him a total beast, but then drops the bombshell. His class is absolute trash. Guardian steps up to set the record straight, making sure our hero knows he's the absolute backbone of the entire squad. He drops the bombshell that this is how most adventurers in the city actually see him, leaving Leon absolutely floored by the revelation. Our hero casually mentions he barely visits the guild, leaving the guard totally floored, but once he explains his party, actually forbid him from showing his face. The guard realizes his teammates are absolute trash. He realizes he walked right into this mess by choice, calling himself a total fool for ever wanting to do it. He flexes his massive new power, realizing that life isn't all doom and gloom, and gives the guard a heartfelt thank you for everything. He steps up and promises Leon a fresh start, then decides to celebrate by treating him to a massive dinner. They're roaming the city streets when they find a spot and decide to duck inside to grab a drink and start feasting. With their plates cleared, the man points him toward the stairway to Paradise Massage Parlor, telling him to finally take his first official step as a brand new adventurer. He steps inside and gets swapped into a bathrobe to wait in a back room, but he can immediately tell there's something seriously creepy about this parlor's vibe. The door swings open, and a girl steps inside, apologizing for the delay and introducing herself as Amiria, our hero's official partner for the night. She leans in and whispers that she hopes he'll enjoy it, sending our hero into a total tailspin as he desperately asks if this is really just a massage parlor. She smirks and says, "Yup," explaining her job is to melt away tension before boldly sliding her hand right under his robe. He finally drops his name as Leon, and Amelia finds it so precious she watches him turn beet red while she holds back the real bombshell for last. She lets him lower his guard for a moment before they finally lean in and lock lips. Leon's convinced this salon is totally bizarre, And as Miria agrees, she figures he's just a complete rookie who's never stepped foot in a place like this before. That wasn't just any kiss, it was his very first one. And as the reality sinks in, she realizes the hero didn't even want his big moment to be with her. He immediately tries to backpedal, but Amelia demands he surrender every single piece of himself to her, and the second he agrees, she dives right back in for another kiss. She sheds her robe and lets him grab a handful, telling him he's got full permission to go wild, but then Amiria suddenly seizes his hand and pulls it straight between her legs. He knows exactly what he has to do, but he's instantly distracted by how soft and warm she feels against him. She dives right in, embracing the moment as she starts to move, until Amiria finally asks Leon if he's reaching his absolute peak. She convinces him to just let it all out, promising that everything's going to be okay. But she soon realizes he's unleashed way too much, leaving our hero frantically apologizing for the mess. She tells him she's finally content, and they settle in for the night. But just as they're drifting off, a notification slams into Leon's vision. All conditions are clear, and the time of the sage has officially begun. A notification pings, saying the conditions are cleared and the time of the sage has officially begun. But he's left scratching his head in total confusion while the girl is already drifting off to sleep right on his chest. The second Leon evolves into a sage, his stats go absolutely nuclear, cranking his strength, mana, and intelligence to god-tier levels. Feeling a strange surge, he starts inspecting his new body. But then Amiria snaps awake and realizes he's already recharged for round 2. She's ready for round 2 and invites Leon back for some more fun. And of course, he's totally down for it. They dive back in for more, but when he sees Amiria is reaching her limit, he triggers his recovery skill to wipe away her exhaustion, because he's feeling way too good to call it quits now. He mends her wounds in a flash, and she's floored to feel her power surging back, immediately demanding that Leon quit holding back and actually try. He figures our hero is about to hit his absolute peak, and asks how he's feeling, but the hero says it's pure bliss, and wants the girl to feel this insane rush too. He cranks her senses to the absolute max, sending Amiria into a screaming frenzy until they both finally hit that ultimate peak. She screams that this is straight up impossible, but her blood runs cold as these bizarre, unnatural sensations start surging through her. Amiria pleads for Leon to stop this madness, confessing that her mind is absolutely reeling from the scandalous sight and his teasing hands. She watches in shock as his arm bulges to a massive size, his back suddenly arching violently as if 1,000,000 volts of electricity just ripped through his body. They finally collapse onto the bed, but when she notices Leon is still practically overflowing, she stares at him in total shock and asks what kind of monster he actually is. Suddenly, her exhaustion evaporates as her senses kick into overdrive, but she's absolutely floored when the hero reveals that magic is the cause. She'd heard whispers about magic being used for a little bedroom spice, but she was dead certain that combat spells only worked inside the tower. He's well aware that his combat levels and skills will absolutely crater outside the tower, but then the real nightmare hits him. Black and white magic won't even trigger out there. He stares down at his palm as the sage's true power finally clicks. And just as his ego starts to skyrocket, a heavy sigh from the girl snaps him right back to reality. She's beating herself up for being a total amateur because she's completely burnt out, but Leon lets out a roar, refusing to let her believe that lie for one more second. He calls it the absolute peak of his entire life, admitting that everything just hits different when they're both having the time of their lives. Amelia bursts out laughing, teasing the hero for acting so bold when he was a total virgin just moments ago, and as his face turns beet red, she leans in and tells him she's actually got a special reward waiting for him. He's playing it safe with the formalities, but Emeria stops him cold, demanding he use her first name because she's ready to get a lot more intimate. He admits he wants the exact same thing before pulling her into a passionate kiss, but Amelia breaks the moment to ask if he can still use magic, and Leon confirms he's still got his powers. The sage's power just hit its limit, but he's already prepping for a comeback because this night is still going strong, even with the sun blazing overhead. Just as he's about to head out, Amiria asks if he's really hitting the tower next, and he confirms it with a nod, feeling totally recharged and ready for battle. She begs him to visit again, swearing she'll be waiting, and he promises that next time, the treat's on him. Our hero marches toward the guild, the Guardian's cryptic promise that he'll be a household name by tomorrow still ringing in his ears, and despite being completely confused, he pushes through the doors to see what's waiting for him. He spots a massive crowd and a girl who's absolutely losing it because the wolf fang sword is missing. But since Leon is totally out of the loop, he just hangs back and eavesdrops on the drama. Another girl pipes up that a member of the Sword of the Wolf's Fang is here, and when her friend asks where, she points right at our hero standing in the doorway. She locks eyes with Leon, marches straight up to him, and demands to know if he's the same guy her colleague was just talking about. Our hero admits he used to be in the group, but a girl recognizes him as the guy who got kicked out, and when she gets in his face and calls him a red magician, he starts sweating bullets. Fuss suddenly recalls the rumors of a total loser magician from the Sword of the Wolf's Fang, and the crowd's entire vibe shifts as they start looking at our hero like he's absolute garbage. Her co-worker bursts into laughter, pointing out that Leon's temporary contract actually expired yesterday. And just like that, the other girl writes him off as a total loser. She tries to scout her for the myriad blooming flowers, but gets shot down instantly because a low-level C-rank squad is way below her standards. She starts flexing that her squad is the highest-ranked one there, but even after getting checked with the fact that the Sword of Wolf Fangs is only rank B, she keeps running her mouth until they both finally head out. Leon's left wondering what the heck just happened, but the second he hits the reception desk, Miriam's waiting with a smirk, already convinced he had a wild night. Stuck in a total cringe fest, she realizes the guildmaster definitely overshared, so she quickly pivots to ask who that girl making all the racket actually was. It's Lydia. And suddenly the hero realizes she's the infamous night princess he's heard all those dark rumors about. Lydia finally smashed through that level 30 requirement during yesterday's intense expedition, and now she's hyped and ready to officially join the Wolffang Sword today. Leon's itching to head out and explore, but he makes it clear he's hitting up the blessing room before he goes anywhere. He realizes he's walked this path before and starts questioning everything, but the hero just grins, reminding him that today is a whole new game. But he quickly checks his ego, realizing he can't get cocky just because of a lucky first run, and a quick glance at the girl tells him she's already on the exact same page. He links up with the guildmaster, who immediately clocks that the hero spent the whole night getting intimate, so Leon begs him to keep his mouth shut around Miriam, because her terrifying gaze still haunts his soul. The guy offers a quick apology and checks in on our hero, noticing he's finally looking like a total badass. A glow-up Leon credits entirely to Emiria, before the man tells him it's time to start actually believing in himself. They finally reach the class change altar, but a system message slaps the hero with a denied because he hasn't met the requirements. Turns out just showing up isn't gonna cut it. He casually mentions he already tipped off HQ to claim a fat 100,000 halva reward for this unknown class, and Leon is totally losing his mind. Our hero starts sweating bullets thinking Emiria might expose his secret, but the man steps in to reassure him that her lips are strictly sealed when it comes to her clients. He figures it's better to keep the sage's secret buried, but that just means he's walking blindly into a nightmare he can't even imagine. Suddenly, a guy breaks his focus, telling our hero he needs to come back after the next round, but he just scoffs that he's flying solo, only for the man to warn him that Miriam wouldn't like that one bit before asking if he's still going to investigate. He warns him to stay sharp since the Wolf Fang Sword Squad, the heavy hitters who usually own the upper floors, are nowhere to be found. But our hero just gives a cocky grin and asks if they haven't only been gone for a single day. He's actually sweating that he might have trusted them way too much with the cleanup, so he warns Leon to stay alert, and you better believe Leon's taking that straight to heart. Our MC marches right up to the front desk. Miriam tries to grill him on his real goals for the expedition, but he just hits her with the silent treatment. However, the moment she starts digging into his past, he's visibly shaken. She's demanding he clear every plan with her first, but his eyes are strictly on Miriam after hearing those wild rumors from the guildmaster. He calls her gorgeous while shamelessly checking her out, but as she tries to drop some vital info, she realizes he's totally spacing out, until Leon suddenly announces they're pushing from the 31st floor all the way to the 35th. The Princess Knight and the myriad blooming flowers just launched their expedition from the 31st floor, and they're pushing for maximum speed. He wraps up the paperwork just as the truth finally hits him, and with their well wishes echoing behind him, our hero sets off on his grand adventure. He rockets through the tower, using his speed skill to warp straight to the 31st floor, where a horde of goblins instantly lunges for his throat. He unleashes a lightning bullet, but it only manages to drop a single foe, sending the rest of the goblin pack into an absolute berserker rage. He lunges forward, draws his blade, and blurs past the monsters, slicing them clean in half. He finally realizes his insane new powers are the real deal, even though he thought he was just imagining things at first, and admits that the second he stepped into that tower with the guildmaster, he felt a level of raw strength he's never experienced before. By switching to the Sage class, he racked up a massive haul of skills that stuck around even after his transformation timed out. Leon glares at his palm, kicks his sense enhancement into high gear, and stands dead still as his mind starts racing with a new plan. The dead silence of this empty floor is seriously creeping him out, so he actually unzips his fly just to check if his Sage ability is finally kicking in. He realizes that getting intimate with Amelia yesterday was what triggered his Sage time, making it crystal clear that the secret to activating this power is actually finishing the job. Leon leans into his own ego, convinced that amping up his emotions will make the payoff legendary. But once he's done, he's left with a whole lot of nothing. He realizes he just needs to get intimate with someone, and if he goes for round 2 with Amelia, he can finally confirm all his wild theories. He's got to keep the grind going to make good on his promise to return with some serious cash and treat her, absolutely blitzing through the 32nd, 33rd, and 34th floors. Our hero storms onto the 35th floor and dives headfirst back into the fray, emerging victorious before ducking into a corner to pop a potion and patch himself up. Grinding all the way to the 35th floor left him completely drained, but just as he's about to turn back, a sudden scream freezes him in his tracks. Right as that happens, a group of girls rounds the corner, one lugging a friend on her back, and Leon realizes he knows her. He shouts to see if they're okay, but she's absolutely floored to run into him. Realizing he's a red magician, they start desperately begging for their lives, and he actually steps up to cast a massive recovery spell on the wounded girl. His friend is completely blindsided, demanding to know how he even learned to pull off 2 skills like that. The victim is already bouncing back, and the girl's jaw hits the floor when our hero casually reveals his white magician is already at level 20. Leon patches up the entire squad, leaving the guys absolutely stunned by his raw power. And when the girl asks if it was just a simple heal, our hero reveals he stacked it with recovery even though his mana is basically at 0. The girls are totally losing it over Leon's skills, unable to fathom how a supposedly weak red mage could possess such insane power. Now that his main classes have officially hit level 20, he's straight up outperforming every mage in the building, leaving his friend absolutely floored by the reveal. Suddenly, a timid girl interrupts them, nervously begging for just a sip of water, but our hero goes totally overboard and summons a massive barrel straight from his inventory. She's totally stunned and asks if he's even worried about his own survival, but Leon just plays it cool, revealing he's got 10 more barrels of water stashed away. A scream echoes through the air, but then the hero drops a bombshell. His vault is already sitting at level 20, so it can handle this easily. The girl goes quiet for a heartbeat before lunging forward to grab Leon's shoulders, desperately begging for help. But he just looks her in the eye and tells her he's already reached his limit. She reveals the princess stayed behind to save them, leaving our hero stunned since he thought they were deep in the 30th floor territory. Now he's left wondering why a weak C-rank squad is even trying to survive in a place this dangerous. They barely push past the 37th floor when a massive Lord-class monster spawns out of nowhere, sending Leon into a total panic because these beasts aren't supposed to show up until the 50th. Hearing from the guildmaster that the Wolfang sword, the guys who practically owned the upper floors, is gone, he immediately demands to know what kind of monster showed up to take their place. He reveals that this is the elite vanguard of the Goblin army, and the Goblin General himself is leading the charge. He questions if a Goblin Lord actually spawned on the 3039th floor, but quickly realizes a team like Myriad of Blooming Flowers doesn't stand a chance against a powerhouse Lord-class monster. They barely managed to scrape past the first pack on the 37th floor, but she was caught completely off guard when massive Lord-class monsters ambushed them on the 39th. She checked to see if they were holding up, but after a quick, "We're fine," they finally admitted the truth. Their weapons were trashed and their mana was bone dry. Just then, another girl rushes over with a frantic warning. The enemy isn't slowing down, and she's convinced these monsters are actually high-tier Lord class. She was stunned that things were already going south on the 37th floor, but she quickly realized they had no choice but to haul ass. She barked at the princess to get moving, promising to hold the line and cover her escape. Princess shakes her head, realizing Rita can't solo the whole pack, and that her squad would be sitting ducks the second she's pulled out, so she screams the warning to her friend. She argued that her halberd's massive reach made her the perfect shield for the group, and once Rita gave her the green light, the leader headed out. He tears down the stairs as the princess dives into the chaos on the 37th floor, while the boys ditch the safe zone and charge straight for the lower levels. Rita sees the princess is barely holding her own and demands to know the plan. But the girl just vows to catch up after she slaughters these monsters, asking for backup just in case things go sideways. Realizing the princess is totally outmatched, he dives in to help, only to notice her squad is dead in the water and won't ever reach the 31st floor without him. The princess whirls around and drops a reality check. They could run into another mob at any second, and that thought has Rita stopping dead in her tracks. She claims that as a lord's daughter, protecting the people is just her duty, but when Rita reminds her they're only adventurers, the princess fires back that they're no different from the common folk. Rita swore she'd bring back reinforcements and took off, praying her ally could hold on just a little longer. Realizing the princess is still locked in a solo deathmatch with the demon lord, Rita admits they'd just be a liability, especially since they're bone dry on magic and supplies. She lunges at Leon, desperately pleading with him to save the princess and even promising they'll act as human shields to protect him. Leon shuts them down, declaring he's taking on this mission as a total lone wolf. Rita is left absolutely stunned by his sudden decision. Then, our hero turns to the other girl, asking if she's ready to dive down to the 32nd floor the moment she's back at 100%. This is child's play for a C-rank pro like her, so Leon takes her word for it and offers her a healing potion to patch her up. He slams back a potion and bolts for the guild, making sure to tell her to pack some extra medicine for the road. She slams back her medicine and prepares to dash for reinforcements, leaving Princess Lydia in his hands, but the hero stops her cold to grant her a massive physical and mental power-up. The buff is toast the second she hits the next floor, but he's praying it's enough to keep her alive for now. She shouts a quick thanks and bolts into the fray. Our hero decides to press on, but Rita stops him in his tracks, asking if he's seriously going to turn down her help and a chance to finally get some rest. He swears everything's under control, vowing to bring the princess back safe and sound, so Rita finally decides to leave the rest to him. He charges up to the 36th floor and starts stacking buffs, triggering physical impulse and cranking his sensitivity to a razor's edge. He's banking on the princess to crush this test, but he can't shake the feeling that another lord is about to crash the party. He shuts down some trouble on the road in a flash, and as the scenery starts looking familiar, he realizes he's finally at the finish line. He chugs a healing potion and realizes he's down to his final trump card. But it's just enough to buy the princess an opening before he peeks around the corner to face the heat. Suddenly, a girl blurs into view, swinging her weapon with everything she's got, but the goblin manages to leap back just in the nick of time. He spots the lord drawing his sword and realizes the princess is completely spent, knowing they're in serious trouble just as she starts trash-talking that fast little monster. Suddenly, a voice rings out from right behind her. The hero steps up and introduces himself as a total low-rank adventurer. Leonti unleashes his sullen breath to absolutely wreck the goblin. The beast is left reeling in shock, giving our hero the perfect opening to tell the princess he only charged in because a sea of blooming flowers begged him to save her. The girl is caught completely off guard by the sudden recovery, but the hero quickly hands her a potion to top her off, sending her charging right back into a fierce showdown with a goblin. The beast effortlessly slips the strike, and that's when it finally clicks for our hero. He's facing a genuine lord, and those razor-sharp, heavy-hitting blows prove it. He knows the drill, so he locks in to parry every incoming strike before unleashing another sullen breath to tear right through that goblin. Leon lands a heavy kick and goes in for the kill, but the goblin actually dodges, making our hero realize this monster is way smarter than he looks. Out of nowhere, she steps forward and tells him she's back in the game, giving Leon props for his hard work while he returns the favor by juicing her up with some insane physical and mental buffs. The goblin scrambles into a fighting stance, but the girl's already leveled her blade. She thanks the hero but tells him to just sit back and watch while she informs the monster that this is officially his final stand. She dives headfirst into the fight, unleashing a relentless barrage of strikes that leaves the beast with no room to breathe, and after one massive hit, sends it skidding back. She decides it's time to finish this for good. He lunges for the finishing blow, but the goblin slips away yet again, making the princess scream that this freak just won't stay down, only for the monster to let out a frustrated growl in response. Right then, the princess lunges forward and skewers the enemy before slamming him into the dirt, leaving the hero seriously impressed by her killer instincts. She lands one last heavy blow before admitting he did a killer job, thanking him after realizing he never dropped his guard and was ready to unleash his magic at any second. She introduces herself as Lydia, a C-rank adventurer, but as she locks eyes with Leon, it suddenly clicks. This guy was actually a member of the infamous Wolf Fangs. Feeling the heat, he snaps back that he's a powerful red magician, sending her into a total panic as she does a complete 180 and starts groveling for all the trash she just talked. She tells him to save the apology, but suddenly a chilling sound echoes through the hallway, and Lydia instantly recognizes that feral howl as a lurking kobold. He snatches her hand and screams for her to make a break for it. She tries to get a word in, but he shuts her down, begging her to just shut up and move. But the princess stands her ground, insisting that even against a lord-class kobold, they've actually got this in the bag. Zia spins around and sees something straight out of a nightmare, while the hero identifies the beast behind them without even glancing back. He's absolutely losing it, because this boss is a myth even on the upper floors, and now they're face to face with a total nightmare, a rare, savage, half-human, half-wolf hybrid. While they're hauling tail away from that nightmare beast, the girl realizes they just blew past their turn and starts shrieking for him to stop, but even though she's sure they're going the wrong way, he just tells her to shut up and trust him. He knows every twist and turn of this tower like the back of his hand, but as the monster's footsteps echo closer, he realizes they're seconds away from being cornered. The hero feels her hand slip away and realizes she's staying behind to stall the beast. She parries the werewolf's strike and screams for him to run, but he suddenly halts and unleashes a chilling, sullen breath. Leon leaves himself wide open for a split second, and while Lydia is watching in total confusion, our hero is actually just playing the bait to lure the enemy right where he wants them. She leaps back in total confusion, demanding to know why Leon is just standing there, but he refuses to leave her side, telling her to wait for his signal and then book it in the opposite direction. He sprints to the end of the aisle, whips around the corner, and bursts through the door on the right, leaving the girl stunned that he's already mapped this out. And when she asks if he's actually got a plan, he just gives her a confident, "Yep." Since he's proven himself, she finally decides to bet on him, and Leon wastes no time. He grabs a barrel of water, gives her a quick signal, and hurls it right at the monster. The barrel smashes right into the enemy, soaking him to the bone, and the hero instantly triggers sullen breathing, sending the beast reeling while the crew hauls tail. After a few seconds, he finally snaps out of it and tracks exactly where Lydia and Leon are heading, and once they reach the door, our hero holds it open for her to step inside. Leon fires off his sullen breath to stun the enemy, giving the hero just enough of a window to dive behind a door and shut them out. He lets out a steady breath and confirms her suspicions, explaining that every floor actually has a designated sanctuary where monsters are strictly forbidden from entering. She knows that beast is gonna hunt them the second it locks eyes, and the MC is so impressed by her sharp instincts that he starts talking to her like they've been buddies forever. She tells him to drop the formalities since they're fellow adventurers, revealing her secret tower identity, and insisting that he's actually the one who's her senior. Our hero tries to switch things up with a super polite title, but she shuts him down instantly, telling him that's a total no-go too. He suggests they ditch the formalities and use her first name, but after she agrees, she immediately grills him on why he blew past the stairs just to hide out here. The hero points out his team might be on the lower floor, and it finally hits her. He was just trying to keep them out of the line of fire because they literally had no other choice. He starts apologizing for dragging her into this mess, but Lydia brushes it off, insisting it's not his fault, and that they're both just completely burnt out. He spreads a cloth on the ground and invites her to relax, and after she thanks him and takes a seat, she asks Leon to join her, leaving him looking totally flustered as he settles in. She starts stretching and catches him staring right at her, making him whip his head away and desperately claim that Lydia just looks a bit thirsty. He whips out a fresh barrel of water, leaving the girl stunned since she just watched him dump one, but he casually reveals his inventory is stacked, showing off 8 more barrels that leave Lydia totally starstruck. She's hailing him as her absolute savior, but he gets all flustered and tells her she's totally overreacting before handing over a ladle so she can finally take a sip. Leon's caught staring, and seeing the water glisten on her lips sends his face turning bright red, just as she suddenly declares she's finally back to life. She rushes over to apologize and, figuring he's gotta be parched too, hands him a ladle for a quick drink. Eventually, boredom sets in, prompting Lydia to ask what's next, but the hero decides to play it safe, insisting that waiting for backup is their only guaranteed way to survive. She's totally caught off guard because the squad is so wrecked they can't even move, leaving her convinced they're going to be stuck there for an eternity. He patched up the scout specifically so she'd call for backup, betting that even in the worst-case scenario, the cavalry will be here by dawn. But then he admits they've got a massive disaster of their own to handle first. Everything comes down to how long that werewolf is willing to wait, because if he gets bored and stalks off, he's heading straight to the lower floors to find someone else to hunt down. He realizes that if the squad stays put, they're all dead meat, and even if backup arrives, taking on that monster on the 4th floor is still going to be a total disaster. The wolf fang sword is nowhere to be found, and a chilling realization hits them. Even if the guild sends every backup adventurer they've got, there's still going to be lunch for that werewolf. He realizes that if his old squad was here, they'd actually have a fighting chance. But then he starts breaking down exactly what'll happen once the defense forces finally roll in. She warns them that her brother won't be showing up anytime soon, explaining that it's way too dangerous and, honestly, the defense forces shouldn't even be involved. He saw this coming a mile away, knowing the soldiers' only mission is to hunt down every beast crawling out of the Banshee. He suddenly remembers that the tower's security system snaps to life the moment you try to reach the next floor, making him realize he's got to play by the rules and team up with the guild first. A heavy silence settles between them, and she hides her face in her hands, convinced they're trapped. But then, our hero drops a bombshell. He's found an escape. She demands answers on the spot, but even though Leon warns her the price is devastating, she doesn't hesitate. She'd rather carry that weight than let innocent people die for her sake. Before they even touch on strategy, he pumps the brakes to see how Lydia actually feels about using magic to help people. He's breaking down the basics of low-level magic when he drops a bombshell. As a red magician, intermediate and high-tier spells are totally off-limits for him. The power is hitting like a mid-tier spell, leaving everyone stunned. How is a red magician using sense enhancement when that should be totally impossible for his class? Lydia's jaw hits the floor when Leon reveals his low-level jobs actually reached level 20, explaining that since he couldn't find a promotion after his red magician hit level 15, he just kept on pushing. Turns out the rumors were 100% legit, and the hero reveals that after hitting level 20, the legendary Sage class actually appeared on his menu, leaving the girl absolutely floored since she's never heard of such a thing. Even though he's still a red mage, Leon drops a bombshell. He actually pulled off a temporary class change without needing a blessing ball. It took a grueling 12 hours for him to finally snap back to normal, and Lydia was completely floored because she'd never even heard of someone attempting a class shift without a blessing ball. He realized the magic ball wouldn't give him a permanent class swap, but that temporary sage transformation still loaded him up with a massive arsenal of crazy skills. She points out his skills are hitting way harder now, and Leon totally agrees, noting that his magic potency absolutely skyrocketed the moment he swapped over to the Sage class. He's betting he can power up enough to actually slay a werewolf, leaving Lydia completely frozen as she tries to wrap her head around his terrifying potential. She's absolutely stunned, but the hero drops a bombshell. He can swap classes without that blessing ball if he hits one secret goal, and Lydia is dying to know the catch. Completely stumped, our hero decides his best bet is to hunker down and wait for the cavalry to arrive. She warns that the body count is only going to rise, but Leon isn't sold on the class change being a fix, and honestly, he's totally regretting the talk since he just nuked any chance of making a move. She sticks to her guns, ready to sacrifice everything for the cause, while our hero desperately begs her to stop. terrified of the soul-crushing pain and trauma she's about to endure. She's willing to endure anything as long as the citizens are safe, but the hero's cold reminder that adventurers should expect death backfires completely, leaving Lydia determined to uncover the truth behind this mysterious condition. He goes for broke and drops the bombshell. His class change depends entirely on their intimacy, and now he's just holding his breath to see how she'll react. Leon's bombshell request has her totally spiraling, and while he's ready to get intimate, she just can't bring herself to cross that line. He flashes back to their plan to unleash the sage's power, and even though she was totally down for it then, she's suddenly gone dead silent. He's just catching his breath when she suddenly hurls a weapon straight at him, making Leon realize he's totally ready to give up on life as he pathetically scrambles away. He spots the girl huddled in the corner looking completely lifeless. But then he catches her muttering under her breath and realizes she's actually desperate for something. Lydia realizes that without the hero's clutch save, she'd be total history, making him her absolute savior. And she knows she's got to find a way to pay him back. She's backed into a corner with zero options left, absolutely dying inside because her very first time is about to be with a guy she barely even knows. Our hero figures. It's best to stick around for her answer, bracing himself for a boring wait while she cools off. But just as he settles in, a piercing scream shatters the silence and sends him spinning around. She catches him off guard by offering to do it anyway. And while he's initially scratching his head, she spells out that she's talking about getting intimate, making him double-check if she's actually for real. She tells him to just get it over with since her mind's already made up. But when Leon asks if she even knows the ropes, she finally admits she's a total first-timer. Turns out, this is actually her very first time, making our hero turn bright red and look away while she innocently asks what she's even supposed to do. Leon spins around and spots her folded laundry, sending a panicked Lydia into a frenzy as she clutches her skirt, convinced the hero is about to strip her right then and there. She finally gives in and lies down, letting our hero take the lead. But Leon just stands there gawking, stunned by her total compliance, until she finally breaks the silence to ask him what his next move is. She's convinced that intimacy is strictly for making babies and can't imagine doing it without love, but then it hits her. This is the only way to trigger the sage's power. Informs him that she is not going to force Leon. Then he informs that he will do it. He sits down next to her and asks her to spread her legs. This makes the girl very embarrassed, but still fulfills the request. Our hero steps right up to seal the deal, but just as he's about to dive in, Lydia starts frantically rushing him, causing him to freeze in his tracks until she starts begging him to kick things into high gear. Leon gets where she's coming from, but he's still stuck at the door. She's convinced she messed up, but Leon breaks it down. She can't actually step inside until she's soaking wet. Think about it. The hero steps up to help, but she shuts him down, insisting on handling this herself before letting him have his shot. He steps back to give her space, but the second she starts doing her thing, she realizes her moans are making everything way too awkward and slams her hand over her mouth to muffle the sound. Her voice keeps rising until she finally hits her peak, gasping out that she's crossed the finish line. She collapses back, shielding her face in total embarrassment as our hero leans in and whispers that he's finally making his move. He slips right in as the sensation starts feeling incredible, and suddenly, the girl starts moaning. Leon's completely clueless until Lydia drops the bombshell that this is her very first time, making him apologize immediately as he starts stressing over whether he's going to hurt her. Lydia's expression shifts into pure resolve as she tells him there's no turning back. They have to move, now. And after a brief silence, the hero's determination hits a whole new level. He pulls her close by the waist, letting her know he's finally made his move. And when he asks if she's hanging in there, she stammers out a super awkward, "I'm fine." She tells him to just hurry up, making him turn bright red as it finally sinks in. He's actually getting intimate with the Lord's stunning daughter, the legendary Princess Knight. He's pushing for that ultimate peak, but as our hero finally starts making his move, the girl is left wondering if he's actually finished yet. Out of nowhere, he drops a bombshell and asks Lydia if she's using a protection spell, and she confesses she cast one because she wasn't about to take any risks. He's ready to double down, but Lydia suddenly panics and tells him to chill out, terrified he's about to end up inside her, leaving him absolutely baffled. She tells him there's no need to finish inside, but he's so clueless about what she's getting at that he just goes ahead and lets loose anyway. He casually mentions they can just keep trying if they fail, which absolutely terrifies her. So she begs him to stop overthinking and finally get down to business. Leon checks to see if she's holding up, and the moment she tells him she's finally ready to go for it, he takes her word and dives right in. She clutches the sheets and lets out a soft moan, desperately trying to hide behind her hand while our hero stays locked in, scanning her every move. He snatches her by the waist again, howling that he's finally hitting his peak, and as they both collapse in exhaustion, she breathes a sigh of relief that it's finally over. Seeing her break down while showing such insane grit, he vows her struggle won't be for nothing. Just as a notification flashes, all conditions have finally been met. With the sage's power finally roaring to life, it's time to turn the tables and take the fight straight to that beast. Our MC hits her with the cleansing spell, and a wild sensation instantly surges through her entire body. Her face contorts as she springs to her feet, clutching her stomach in pure disbelief. Lydia realizes that the corruption is just gone, and she's left completely speechless by the miracle. Lost in the sensation, the hero suddenly hammers her with his recovery magic, and the surge of relief is so intense it makes her entire body shudder. She shoots him a look of total disbelief before absolutely losing it, screaming, "Wait! How are you actually casting spells inside a safe zone?" He reveals they've finally tapped into the sage's power, and seeing Lydia's jaw drop in pure awe gives him a massive surge of confidence. He reaches out and cranks Lydia's physical and sensory stats to the max, making her feel like an absolute powerhouse, and leaving her totally hyped by the boost. B snatches up her weapon, feeling a massive surge of strength that makes her feel light as air, and absolutely certain she's about to crush that monster. She talks a big game, swearing she isn't scared and promising to end him in seconds. But her bravado vanishes when she sees him clutching his head in agony, and she rushes over to see what's wrong. Panic sets in as she realizes she forgot her underwear, and the hero just points it out, announcing the cleansing is done while she screams in total embarrassment and dives to cover herself up. She catches on and realizes with total disgust that our hero saw the whole thing. He tries to hide his face in pure shame before finally cracking and spilling the beans, which sends her into a total rage as she lunges for her weapon and starts screaming insults. He's absolutely shaking in his boots, but he finally breaks down and fesses up to everything. That's when Lydia decides she's done playing defense and charges out of the safe zone to launch her counterstrike. She shoots a confident, wicked smirk right at our hero's face. Nvidia's ready to slay the beast and make it back alive, but despite the hero's warning that the safe zone vanishes the moment the door shuts, she recklessly charges right into the hallway. Lydia promises him everything's going to be just fine, but the second he clicks that door shut, he feels the entire vibe of the room take a sudden, chilling turn. It's all because of that werewolf, who suddenly looms at the far end of the hall, staring him down. The beast locks eyes with the man who wounded him, and his fury hits a total boiling point. A girl suddenly steps into our hero's path and throws down the gauntlet, her eyes burning with a savage hunger for victory as she charges forward and unleashes a massive swing just before they collide. He's stunned she's lunging for a direct strike, realizing her physical buffs make her way more powerful than he ever imagined. She goes absolutely berserk on the werewolf, raining down a flurry of strikes until they clash and recoil, leaving the beast's back wide open for our hero to strike. He lets loose a devastating strike, but the enemy catches it with his bare hand, proving exactly why this beast is the ultimate rare monster. The werewolf whirls around and lunges at Leon to force him back, but the hero catches the strike on his blade, only for the beast to start hammering away, desperate to shatter Leon's weapon into pieces. Becoming a sage turned him into a literal tank, but now the real question is, does he have enough firepower to actually blast through a werewolf? The beast manages to snare our hero, but she strikes hard to steal its focus, giving him the perfect opening to unleash a game-changing spell. She yells that she's launching the beast his way and shoves it instantly, swinging her blade to skewer the werewolf until it completely evaporates into thin air. He lets out a satisfied laugh as the realization sinks in. They actually pulled it off, just as a massive level-up notification flashes right in front of his eyes. He realizes he just hit the jackpot, scoring a legendary magic blade, mana-sensing powers, a level up for his sage class, and a massive buff to one of his skills. Since skills like magic blade and mana detection are locked for beginners, He realizes he's finally graduated from the rookie ranks. He looks completely miserable, but the moment he's snapped back to reality, he starts frantically shaking his head and denying the whole thing. He realizes that hunting for rare magic and mid-tier skills is just part of the sage life, and he's dead certain his power is about to skyrocket. Lydia snatches up the magic stone and hoists it high, totally awestruck by its massive size. But honestly, what else would you expect from a rare beast like a werewolf? Back at camp, Lydia snuggles a piece of fur, gushing over how soft it feels, while the hero reminds her it's actually tough as nails, and she totally agrees. She's vibing with the fluff until her face completely drops, and she screams that they're sitting ducks, leaving the hero with no choice but to agree they need to bail immediately. Leon catches Lydia hanging back, and just as she's about to spill her guts, she bites her tongue, forcing our guy to finally step in and ask what's really eating her. She checks her pocket watch and tells the crew they've actually got time to spare, before turning to the hero and asking why he's in such a massive rush. He tries to brush it off, claiming they've already scouted this place, but she immediately snaps back, arguing that they've actually pushed way deeper into the unknown than he realizes. Lydia grills him on whether they're aiming for the upper floors, leaving our hero stammering in confusion, but she snaps that they've grown way too powerful to just turn back now, and demands to know his final decision. The upper floors are crawling with Lord-class bosses, giving our guys the perfect chance to farm massive XP while keeping the heat off the chaotic explosive flower crew. Leon's gears are turning, and even though Lydia insists this is just a way to test her strength, he's 100% sure she's actually hiding a secret agenda. He realizes she's completely overlooked one massive disaster, and her jaw hits the floor when he finally spells it out for her. We realize the sage is on a ticking clock, and when the girl shifts her look to ask how much time they have left, our hero is left spiraling in deep thought. Leon and Amelia spent the entire night lost in each other until they finally passed out at dawn. And while he knows the trigger usually hits the second they're done, he hasn't forgotten the times that message lagged for a full hour. She presses him for the secret to triggering his sage mode, but the hero realizes the transformation cut out the second he drifted off to sleep. Leon remembers that weird message flashing right before he drifted off, and now he's left scratching his head over why it even showed up. With only 1 hour left on the clock, she wonders how far they could have pushed with 6. But Leon tells her straight, it all depends on what they're actually aiming for. He casually mentions they could have hit the 45th floor by now if they'd taken the shortcut, leaving Lydia in total shock as he reveals he's got the entire tower map burned into his brain. She's absolutely losing it with excitement, shouting about how epic this is. But Leon drops a major reality check. They can get there, but they're never coming back because floor transitions take way too long. Lydia gets all flustered and admits she's actually down for it, leaving the hero so stunned he has to double-check if he heard her right. She hints that they can always go for round 2 if things get ugly, leaving our hero totally stunned before he finally asks Lydia if she's actually for real. She flashes a satisfied smirk, knowing the Lord is sworn to protect the tower, and declaring that as his daughter, it's only right that she shoulders that same massive responsibility. He tries to play it safe and wait for backup, but Lydia shuts him down immediately, pulling her rank as a noble's daughter to demand he follow her lead without question. She shifts her appearance and, with a nervous gulp, asks our hero if they're finally ready to go through with this. Seeing Lydia act like this leaves poor Leon a total blushing mess and seriously on edge. He's satisfied and shrugs it off, thinking it's no biggie, while the girl makes a huge point of telling him she's thrilled he finally gets it. She whips around, insisting they hit the road immediately because they're burning daylight, but Leon tells her to hold up. He grabs her by the shoulders to stop her in her tracks, making it crystal clear that he's the one calling the shots and leading the way. The scream sends her jumping out of her skin as her entire body freezes up in terror. She immediately curls into a ball and collapses right there on the floor. Our hero panics instantly, rushing to her side to see if she's even all right. She's totally fine, just a bit rattled, but Leon? He's still stuck in a bind and basically decides to just shrug it off and move on. He announces they're finally moving up to the 41st floor, admitting he almost missed some hidden monsters during his sweep, which leaves Lydia dying to know how he actually sniffed them out. After taking down the werewolf, they both snag a level up, and he explains that this is exactly how he unlocks his skills. But even though the girl jumped 2 levels to hit 33, She's left empty-handed with 0 new abilities. Our hero triggers his mana detection, and the second he shuts his eyes, the goblin's blurry silhouette starts flickering into his mind. Lydia notices him starting to buckle under the pressure and asks if he's all right, but he just brushes it off, saying his brain is totally fried from the massive info dump. Leon catches his breath and wheels around, telling her he needs another shot, so she's gotta ask him one more time. He reveals he's mapped out the entire floor in his head, leaving Lydia totally stunned. She shrieks in shock at first, but then she freezes as a sudden realization hits her. Out of nowhere, she asks if he's actually serious about boosting his magic radar, and he explains that a wider range is the only way to supercharge his sensitivity. She catches one look at Leon's hyped-up face and realizes he didn't use that power on himself, so she decides to let him cook as he turns his back to get dead serious. His senses go into total overdrive, letting him track every monster through the walls until he spots the big boss, a level 35 goblin general. He starts scouting the area and spots a haul of treasure chests. But his excitement fades when he realizes they're sharing the floor with level 25 goblins and a beefy level 32 kobold. He realizes that while the monsters look like total blurs, this skill is actually feeding him a massive mountain of hidden intel. Seeing him frozen solid, the girl starts frantically calling out Leon's name until he finally snaps out of his daze and turns to face her. He's getting a front row seat to her curves as she frantically asks what's going on, but he suddenly lunges back, desperately shielding his lower half, so Lydia doesn't catch on to his awkward predicament. She's completely oblivious at first, but then she catches him shaking like a leaf, and even though she asks if he's okay, he just brushes it off and insists he's totally fine. He backs off, telling her his brain is hitting total overload and he needs a minute to process everything. Then, low-key triggers his cleanup skill while joking that he got so fired up he actually started breaking a sweat. She warns him not to push his luck, but he just laughs it off as they charge up to the 36th floor and sprint down the right path. He tells her to hang a left, warning her that a kobold is lurking right around the corner, but Lydia insists on taking it down solo. And when they finally face off, even the monster looks shocked to see them. She blurs behind the kobold in a flash, draws her blade to tell him his luck just ran out, and then absolutely demolishes him. The crew finally hits the exit, and our hero turns to Lydia to see how she's holding up after he completely buffed her stats with his magic. She admits my stamina is through the roof now and immediately pushes us to keep storming the higher floors. Deep on the 37th floor, Leon cranks his physical and sensory buffs to the max, only for Lydia to reveal that his higher level is making his magic more powerful than ever. He figured the effect would drop off once they hit the upper floor, so he urged everyone to keep moving before his sage mode finally timed out. Lately, she's been feeling a bit lost, so she finally asks Leon what his move is once this whole sage business is over. And man, that really gets his gears turning. He insists they turn back, refusing to put Lydia through this nightmare anymore. And even though the girl starts off screaming her head off, she eventually begins to waver. She shrugs it off and tells them she's totally down. But when the hero double-checks if she's ready for the 41st floor, Lydia screams that she's aiming even higher, all the way to floor 45. She drops the bombshell that they've still got 9 massive floors to scale, but she just smirks, saying that's exactly where she's headed. She's dead set on keeping that tower secure to protect the people. And she doesn't care if she has to go through it with the hero 10, 20, or even 100 more times. Lydia isn't even flinching as she drops the news, and just as Leon tells her to take a breather, a girl's scream shatters the silence as she panics to find the safe zone. He tries talking sense into her, but since words are useless, he just grabs her by the shoulders, sending Lydia into a total blushing meltdown. Once things settle, Leon reminds her that the sage's era isn't over yet, so there's no need to rush. But right then, a completely different realization hits her like a ton of bricks. She admits she's dying to feel his touch, but after a tense moment, Leon finally pulls away, leaving a trembling Lydia to whisper that she finally gets the message. She tries to apologize, thinking she just got swept up in the heat of the moment, but the hero shuts her down, telling her that taking responsibility is never something to be sorry for. She grips her weapon once more and declares they're ready to move, a confident smirk spreading across her face as her eyes ignite with pure excitement. The squad blitzes their way up to the 38th floor in record time, where Lydia absolutely shreds a pack of goblins before they push on to the 39th, where our MC finally steps up to handle the next wave of monsters. The team storms up to floor 40, where the girl dives straight into the melee while Leon backs her up with some clutch magic. They finally push through to the 41st floor, but another pack of goblins is already waiting to jump them. He glances back to announce that every single Lord-class beast on this floor is officially history, and the girl finally lets out a sigh of relief, admitting she's feeling way better now. He asks how much time they've got left, and she checks her watch, telling him they've still got 5 minutes on the clock. He's dead set on hitting the deformation zone, but the second he reports it, the realization hits him like a truck. That girl wasn't leading him into chaos. She was actually offering him a path to the safe zone. They all shout in shock, trading confused looks, and while the hero tries to call for a retreat, she's dead set on pushing all the way to the 45th floor. He brings up how she wanted to quit, but she snaps back that she just didn't care anymore. Right before she notices something terrifying and lets out a piercing scream, he checks if the wise man's power always taps out after exactly 1 hour. But the hero reveals that things went down a lot differently this time. He's gunning for that safe zone, knowing that once he clears this trial, he'll finally get the answers he's been searching for. Leon presses for more, and a totally flustered girl tells him he can actually go ahead and do that to her, quickly looking away as she holds her breath for his response. He lets out a massive sigh, but finally caves to Lydia's plan to hit the safe zone first, making her spring to her feet to ask if he's actually for real. And yeah, he's dead serious. Honestly, he admits that getting intimate with a total knockout like Lydia wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And hearing that, she bolts upright, practically begging him to say it again. He barks that they've only got 60 seconds left while the girl is practically paralyzed with embarrassment. But the guys manage to scramble into the safety of the 41st floor just in time. He plays the gentleman and lets the girl exit first, but the moment he steps inside and clicks the door shut, a wave of bizarre energy suddenly surges through his entire body. He drops the bombshell on Lydia that the era of the sage is officially over, leaving her paralyzed with embarrassment as she agonizes over the ultimate question. Should she actually go through with this or not? By grinding his class level, he realizes he can supercharge every single effect. And the best part? Even after a class change, he still gets to keep those skills in his back pocket. He shouts that while a red magician might stomp a level 1 sage, the tables have officially turned now that Leon's hit level 3. Lydia can see he's becoming an absolute beast, but she's still hesitating to go all in. Leon saw how much she was spiraling and told her to chill out, insisting that heading back home right now wouldn't be the disaster she was making it out to be. Earl slams his axe into the dirt, screaming at the top of his lungs that he's totally done with this tour. The other guy tries to backpedal, insisting that's not what he meant at all. But Lydia cuts him off mid-sentence, demanding he finally decide whether he's in or out. And just like that, Earl snaps back that he's actually ready to go for it. So they're finally ready to pull the trigger. Honestly, she couldn't care less about the risks. If Leon's all in, then she's riding with him, no questions asked. But Leon stops her, asking if this is something she actually wants for herself. Her face turns beet red as she starts flailing her arms, screaming that she never said that, while a terrified Leon desperately tries to get her to pipe down. She shoved him back with her weapon, sending Leon crashing to the floor with a scream, while Lydia just sat down next to me, acting totally calm before deciding that a hug was actually non-negotiable. By teaming up, they're finally ready to storm the higher floors, power leveling like crazy while wiping out every elite monster in sight. And seeing the Lord's daughter become a total beast has the whole city celebrating. In reality, they could have easily smashed through to the 50th floor if they'd gone all out. But a sheepish Leon admits he was banking on backup, so he's lowballing their goal to floor 45. She hops right onto his lap, and Leon's heart starts racing as he feels her warmth and softness pressed against him, while she turns beet red and lets out a shaky breath. Cheryl turns beet red, stuttering that she's only doing this to power up and keep the tower secure. She goes all in and pulls him into a massive, bone-crushing hug. Leon doesn't hesitate for a second, admitting he's been wanting this just as much. Lydia just watches with a smirk, basically saying, "Yeah, I totally called it." With no other moves left, it was clear these two just needed a massive hug. Leon starts to stammer it out, being his usual awkward self, but Lydia shuts him down mid-sentence. telling him to just chill out because everything is totally fine. Lydia screams her lungs out as he pulls her in tight, and while Leon's gritting his teeth and loving every second of the thrill, he still has to tell her to pump the brakes. She threw her head back and let out a soul-piercing scream, her breath coming out in ragged, exhausted gasps. Leon squeezed his eyes shut, knowing he was finally reaching his absolute breaking point. They finally broke the embrace, both of them letting out a massive, heavy sigh of relief. They all pulled each other into a desperate, bone-crushing hug, while Leon realized with a shock that the sage's power had vanished the moment they hit the safe zone. But these intense feelings, they weren't going anywhere. He realized the sensory boost was still in total overdrive, and with his body buzzing from the pleasure, staying locked in this position with Lydia was becoming a serious problem. He gripped her shoulders and realized Lydia was acting totally out of character, all because her senses were cranked up to a whole new level. Leon felt every condition click into place as the sage's power finally surged, though he's still low-key wondering if a hug was actually part of the ritual. He argues that this insane state only triggers when you're caught in a bone-crushing hug. He's dying to dig deeper and figure out exactly how it works. But then, a massive, weary sigh echoes right in Leon's ears. She's totally mortified by the situation, and Leon, noticing her clothes are a bit disarrayed, awkwardly stammers out a question to see if she's even okay. She told him to just ignore her, but Leon leaned in, placed a hand on her head, and roared that he was activating purification. She was absolutely stunned. But Leon casually explains he just nuked the curse with a purification spell, and as she celebrates her sudden recovery, he checks in to make sure she's finally back to her old self. She bashfully admitted she didn't actually mind, but when a clueless Leon asked what she said, she turned beet red and shrieked it was nothing, even though her face told a completely different story. He's convinced his writing skills are the secret sauce here, and since he's actually hyped about how the power kicked in, he tells her she can totally stop stressing. She kept hyping herself up, convinced she was finally nailing the noble lady vibe, but she just couldn't handle these awkward feelings, even as a super confused Leon told her she looked totally charming. They finally pushed through to the 42nd floor. Lydia absolutely shredded another monster, bragging that she just hit a brand new level. Leon shouted that he was right there with her. She pointed out that with things going this well, he'd even managed to unlock some insane new skills. Leon reveals he's mastered quick casting, and Lydia's jaw hits the floor. That's a legendary level 70 skill that even the great Lloyd from the Sword of Wolfsfang hasn't been able to touch. Leon thought it was absolute genius. The faster they grinded those levels, the faster their research would skyrocket. They were right on the verge of clearing the 43rd floor, but they were racing against the clock before the sage's power finally ran out. All just to claw their way up to the 45th floor. Lydia's already asking what the hell the game plan is now. He makes it clear. They aren't stopping until they hit that 45th floor. But before the next climb, he stops to ask if she's starving. No amount of regeneration magic or top-tier potions could ever patch up that void, and while she was clearly annoyed, she snapped that she already knew and refused to let it stop their journey. The sage state might be gone, but those insane support buffs are still surging through him. Plus, there isn't a single Lord-class monster left to deal with past the 45th floor. He's definitely not dead weight, even if he is just a lowly red mage. But Lydia just shrugs it all off, making it clear she couldn't care less about his status. They were desperate for a plan, but she screamed that survival wasn't guaranteed, leaving Leon to look away and awkwardly mumble his instructions. He roared at him that they could finally pull it off. Leon was left speechless, staring back in total disbelief. Lydia bashfully chimed in, admitting that he really could do it. But then she suddenly lunged forward with her hand outstretched, screaming for him to stop. She gets all flustered, blushing hard as she mumbles that his intense gaze is way too embarrassing. Leon just shrugs and promises he'll look away then. She's totally stunned, asking if he's actually serious about not watching. Leon asks why she won't just turn around, but a flustered Lydia admits her clothes would ride up, so he tells her to just stand up and lean against the wall instead. Pressed against the wall, she nervously asked what he was even trying to do. Leon told her to just lift her torso a bit higher. Lydia questioned if this would actually work, pleading with him to just hurry it up. Leon gave her a firm nod, signaling that he was ready to go. She figured this was finally the end for them. But the second Leon pulled her into a hug, Lydia let out a massive shriek of pure embarrassment. She's desperately trying to play this off as a string of freak accidents. But the truth is, she wasn't even part of the squad originally. And with her being a noble's daughter and him just a commoner, their worlds should have never even collided. He was squeezing her so tight it actually hurt. And even though Leon wanted to make this final hug last forever, Lydia finally snapped and screamed at him to let go. The grip tightened, and Lydia let out a piercing shriek. This embrace had dragged on so long she was already running on fumes. Both girls were absolutely losing it, screaming their heads off as the chaos reached a fever pitch. She's so drained she finally loses her grip and starts plummeting, but Leon catches her and screams at her to be careful, only for her to shrug it off as Leon realizes the conditions are met and the sage's power explodes into life. They kept tearing through the levels. On the 42nd floor, Leon managed to heal the girl just in time. By the 43rd floor, Lydia and Leon were in a high-speed pursuit of the final beast. Finally, on the 44th floor, Lydia stepped up and put the monster down for good. With the sage's era officially over, Lydia brandished her weapon with a wild grin, shouting for the monsters to clear a path as she absolutely dismantled them. The duo pushed all the way down to the 41st floor, where a grinning Lydia bragged about how easy it was, but Leon told her to hold up while he fired off some support magic to gear them up. He lashed out in frustration, hating how pathetic his magic felt without a sage's buff, but when he actually apologized for his weak spells, Lydia just stared at him like he'd completely lost his mind. Shay beams with pure hype, gushing that she can't believe a red magician just pulled off such an insane spell, leaving our guy totally blindsided by her sudden energy. She flashed a confident grin, hyped that the entire floor was finally theirs to raid, while Leon just gave a bashful smile and suggested they make a break for the stairs, leaving her to double-check if he was actually serious. Leon questions why they skipped the safe zone and teases Lydia about being worried, making her scream a blushing denial, though she makes it clear she's ready to go all the way if they have to. He was completely caught off guard. The girl shrieked at the top of her lungs, insisting that something like that couldn't possibly exist. But the guy just brushed it off, telling her everything was totally fine. He promised they'd head straight for the safe zone she'd mentioned earlier. Leon skidded to a halt, completely baffled, and demanded to know what on earth he was looking at. Light demands to know what's going on, and the guy warns him that he's sensing a massive, terrifying surge of magical energy. Lydia wonders if they let someone slip through the cracks, but he explains that this whole area is actually a twisted deformation zone. They were absolutely ecstatic to finally see real human faces. The girl was totally caught off guard, asking if humans were actually supposed to look like that. The guy screamed that a squad of 10 was closing in, and it looked like the cavalry had finally arrived. He insisted they ditch the safe zone and take the fight directly to them instead. Lydia let out a piercing scream, making it clear she was all in. They charged ahead until the guy suddenly barked Lydia's name. He flashed a hopeful grin and begged her to keep the sage a total secret, his eyes practically pleading for her to actually have his back. Lydia's totally blindsided, demanding to know why he can't just shake that weakling label when he clearly deserves way more respect. But Leon just gives her a humble thanks for actually believing in him. He admitted he was terrified this would land him in hot water, then suddenly froze, going dead silent as he carefully weighed his next words. He asked if Leon would finally spill the beans about the sage, but that meant exposing his secret terms. Leon knew that once the truth was out, everyone would finally get how just two guys managed to slaughter a werewolf, storm the 45th floor, and make it back alive. She shyly mumbled that it was totally fine, making Leon beam with a massive grin as he thanked her, though he quickly added that there was something else he had to say. He locked eyes with her and told her to stay out of the fight, sending Lydia into a total blushing frenzy as she realized Leon was only doing this because he truly cared about her. Leon shouts that if he can just score a massive payday from a tower raid, his money problems are over. He's trying to keep things low-key for that peaceful life he craves. But then she turns to him and asks, "So how'd it go?" Beaming with a huge smile, she promised that if this is what Leon wants, his secret about the sage is locked away forever. As they pushed forward, Lydia suddenly screeched to a halt and screamed for Leon to look ahead. It was a total case of déjà vu. Two guards were blocking the path, chatting with some guy who slowly turned his head and locked eyes with the couple. He's screaming at the top of his lungs that he's finally found Lydia, and while a shocked Leon tries to figure out how they even know each other, the girl shrieks that her big brother has finally arrived. She looked him dead in the eye and demanded to know what he was even doing there. He gripped her shoulders and explained that the guildmaster was the one who tipped him off. She cut him off mid-sentence, asking if he'd reached out to the defense forces directly. Either way, he'd managed to get there in the absolute blink of an eye. He bellows that it's already been half a month since Flaming Whirlwind hung up the cape, urging everyone to clear out so they can finish this conversation in private. He locked eyes with Leon, who was watching from the sidelines, while Leon's brother roared that they'd have a serious reckoning once they finally made it out. They hit the city to catch their breath and finally hash things out. They headed straight for the guild to lay all their cards on the table. Lydia's big brother apologized for the vibe, but insisted on booking a room. The girl just nodded and told him to follow her lead. Leon dropped into the seat right across from the girl's brother. Lydia was practically jumping out of her skin, shouting for her brother to start the talk. But the guy just barked back, telling her to hold on and wait a damn minute. All the while, Leon kept his eyes locked on him, sizing him up with a sharp gaze. She bursts into the room, frantically apologizing for the delay, but the guy just waves it off and tells her to grab a seat, so she settles in right next to Lydia. Ryan steps up to reintroduce himself as Ryan Kuven, the Lord's official envoy, and the werewolf girl is actually floored by how much respect they're showing her people. She's absolutely hyped, calling it a massive honor just to stand in their presence. This is Rita, the powerhouse leading the legendary chaotic explosive color squad. Lydia just smirks, figuring her reputation already speaks for itself. And then there's Leon, a lone wolf adventurer who's used to flying solo. Lydia finally gets her chance to explain, and while he shuts his eyes in total frustration, he stays put just to hear his sister out. Ryan demanded an explanation, but when she casually claimed she was just there for the teleporter, he shut her down, clarifying he wanted to know how she ended up in such a total mess. He flashed a confident smirk, ready to drop the news. Ryan glared back, clearly annoyed, and demanded to know what he was talking about. Sensing the heavy tension, the guy quickly pivoted and excitedly spilled the beans. Leon laid everything out, giving Ryan the full breakdown of what was really going on. It makes total sense why he used Lydia as a complete carry to reach the upper floors, but she absolutely lost it, screaming at him for even suggesting such a thing, while he just fired back that as a red mage, he's nothing but dead weight. Rita snaps, roaring that Leon is anything but a burden, leaving a confused Ryan fumbling for the truth until Lydia sheepishly tells Leon to just show everyone those mysterious pieces. As Ryan stands before the stone, Lydia's brother is absolutely losing it, shocked that he actually took down a werewolf. Rita just grins, calling Leon's magic support legendary, and Lydia nods along in total agreement. He scrutinized every inch of the stone, desperate to prove to himself that this thing was the real deal. He locked eyes with the crowd and let out a wild, ear-piercing scream of pure hype. But then, looking totally embarrassed, he sheepishly mumbled an apology and begged for their forgiveness. It all clicks now. Leon is a total powerhouse who's been Lydia's golden ticket. But why the heck were they aiming for the upper floors? Lydia reveals that it would have been way smarter to just hole up in the 37th floor's safe zone instead of tangling with a werewolf, but Lydia shoots that idea down, reminding them they have no clue when reinforcements will actually show up. Only then could they finally beat a retreat back to the lower floors. But check this out. The place is crawling with adventurers playing guard instead of actual soldiers. Normally, you wouldn't even see these guys until you hit the 31st floor. Talk about awkward. He was dying of embarrassment. Leon hung his head, forced to admit the guy hit the nail on the head. The only reason they'd made it this far was all thanks to the sage. He turned to Lydia and begged her to keep this whole thing a total secret. But then the guy spoke up and dropped a massive truth bomb. He drops a sincere apology that catches Leon completely off guard, admitting that his sister's weakness must have been a massive headache for him to deal with. Ryan roared back that Lydia had been a massive help, and despite the upper floors being a total death trap, he'd stuck by her side to bring her home in one piece. He bellows out his deepest apologies and thanks. leaving Leon absolutely stunned as he tries to tell him that all this isn't even necessary. He flashes a grin that says even if things got crazier, Leon's just getting started, so don't you dare sleep on his insane power. No matter how much talent he's packing, he's still just a bottom-tier scrub stuck at level 20, and the girl didn't even try to hide her total disgust as she glared him down. He snaps that she has no clue how terrified he's been, unable to stomach the thought of her ending up just like her dad, leaving Lydia completely blindsided as she demands to know what really happened to him. His legendary S-rank squad, the Seven Heavens Gladiators, had been completely annihilated. The girls screamed in disbelief, realizing this was the team that conquered the Onu Tower, the most lethal dungeon on the continent. It seemed impossible, since they'd somehow blitzed through the 99th floor in just a few days. But the guy just looked at them and confirmed that he was indeed the one. He reveals they stormed the 100th floor 2 weeks ago, but they've gone completely dark, 10 days past their scheduled return date. He reported that the army and every available adventurer were scouring floors 91 through 99, but with no sign of the Seven Heavens Gladiator. Lydia shrieked in total shock that she was actually down on the 100th floor. He points out the boss's literal hunting ground to his sister, leaving her jaw on the floor as he drops the grim news. Nobody survives the 100th floor, and even though he believed their father's elite squad could handle the heat, they never made it back. Choking back tears, Lydia insists they have to track down his remains to finally uncover the truth. Ryan just looks at her and drops a total bombshell. He's already found them. But she's still convinced he'll just reappear out of thin air, laughing that signature laugh like he never even left. The tension was suffocating, but suddenly a guard storms in and barks that Ryan's time is up. Ryan just looks at his new crew, tells Leon and Rita they're free to bail, and just like that, it was over. He bolts up from the table, eyes sparkling with pure hype as he stares at the girl. But just as the other guy tries to call out for Lydia, Ryan shuts him down instantly, claiming this is strictly private family business. He was told he could pocket all this insane loot as his personal prize, but Leon just stood there, completely torn on what to do. Right then, the guard stepped in and ushered Leon and Rita straight out the door. He cast one final, lingering look at Lydia before leaving her behind. He gave Lydia a grateful smile, thanking her for everything she'd done, but she just bit her lip in silence as they walked out, only for Rita to drop the news that something absolutely unthinkable had just happened. She flashes a grin, admitting they'd be dead meat if it weren't for him, but Leon just shakes her hand and tells her that in a world this insane, they've got to have each other's backs. He finally headed back since everyone was worried sick, and the girl just gave him a massive, beaming smile, promising to thank him properly later. Acting like it was no big deal, Rita just waved him off, vowing she'd make him accept her thanks eventually, leaving Leon to let out a long, shaky breath as she walked away. Liam decided to call it a night and retreated to the hotel to recharge, but the moment the sun rose, he marched right back into the guild where Miriam immediately spotted him and gave him a big wave. She flashed him a smirk, knowing he'd been through the ringer yesterday, and Leon could only nod in exhaustion. When she asked what brought him by today, he told her he had some loot to show off, and Miriam told him she was all ears. Leon dumped the Goblin Lord's bones and fangs onto the table, revealing a massive stack of universal-class loot that Miriam could only describe as pure brilliance. Leon beamed with pure hype, declaring his victory over the werewolf and handing over his card to claim the C-rank promotion he'd finally earned after that brutal expedition. She was dead set that Leon earned every bit of it, and now that he's officially hit C-rank, he can finally rake in those massive tower rewards, leaving him screaming about how he hit the absolute jackpot. He used to be just a charming little kid, but now he's grown into someone you can actually count on. And while Leon awkwardly plays it off, saying he's glad, he's secretly wondering where the heck this conversation is even going. She drops the ultimate question and asks to be his wife, and while Leon admits he's always noticed her devotion, she screams that she'll give it her all, only for him to roar back that he's still becoming an adventurer no matter what. She was all smiles, planning how they'd both work, buy a house with her savings, and even raise 3 kids. But Leon just shut it all down, telling her she needed to find someone way better than him. A massive bang echoed through the room, making him snap his head toward the reception in total shock. Miriam had just slammed her fist onto the table with every ounce of strength she possessed. Leon could only stare, asking her what the hell that was all about. She just sighed, sounding completely exhausted as she told him his answer was way too old school. He clutched his shirt and let out a scream as she appeared. Wait, who the heck was that? If she's already 29 and pushing 30, why is she still single? Leon piped up, hyped as ever, insisting she looks way younger than her age. He swore he'd marry her right this second. But Leon was desperately begging her to let go while Miriam sobbed that she had nothing left. All while the poor guy wheezed that he literally couldn't breathe. They literally had to drag her away, kicking and screaming as she went totally ballistic, howling that she was destined to marry Leon and that he had to save her. She rushed up and bowed low, apologizing for the absolute chaos, but Leon just played it cool, leaving her staring at him like she was trying to read his soul. He was totally in the dark, so he never meant for things to spiral into such a giant mess. Leon just stood there, sweating, awkwardly stammering out, "Wait, what are you even talking about?" Little did he know, Miriam was a total wild card who went around proposing to basically everyone. She'd been stuck there for 3 long years, yet she'd never seen anything like this. But Leon just threw his arms out wide, laughing that he was already used to this kind of madness. Miriam is a total magnet for wolf-related chaos, and Leon's dead certain she's tied to that wolf sword, especially since the girl drops a bombshell. They treat Leon like absolute trash, and that's the real reason behind it all. She frantically apologized for her wild theories and promised to finish the talk later, leaving Leon standing there in total awkward silence. Once work wrapped up, Leon headed back to his room and crashed onto the bed, his mind racing with guilt over whether he'd totally crushed Miriam's heart. But just as he's debating a visit to Amelia, a sudden knock startles him at the door. He called out from the bed that she could enter, but then Rita bursts in, swinging a bottle and shouting, making him realize he was in for one seriously long night. Right? Leon's eyes go wide as he asks what the heck she's doing there, but she just beams at him, saying she really wanted to treat him to something as a huge thank you. She leaned across the table, boasting that she knew this hotel like the back of her hand, but Rita just flashed a wicked grin and bragged about having her spies everywhere. She shoved a bottle toward him and told him to chill out because it was time to drink. But when Leon asked Miss Rita if she needed some rest, she snapped back that he should drop the formalities. It's just Rita. But honestly, looking at the big picture, they've actually got a real shot at this. Rita lets out a hyped-up cheer, screaming that it's finally time to get the show on the road. The guy just warns her to stay chill and not go totally overboard. She yells back, demanding to know what kind of survivors they're even fighting for. Leon fires back that it's for the people left behind, and for their own damn health. He starts hacking, catching Rita totally off guard before she bursts into laughter, joking that he'd actually be a hilarious guy if his life wasn't such a complete disaster. He awkwardly dodged the question about the Miriam disaster, and when Rita teased him about having just one more glass, he played it cool and insisted he was still sober enough to stay right where he was. Time skips ahead and the duo is vibing, but Rita confesses she just doesn't get these kobolds and hates their guts, waiting for the guy to finally speak up. Leon finally caves, calling them a total headache even though he's still a total rookie at tanking, while Rita screams that they're definitely hitting their next research mission as a team. He suggested that if everyone was cool with it, they should just handle the whole thing right then and there. But Rita suddenly screamed that the drinks were officially bone dry. Leon noticed the snacks were gone too, and asked if they should make a quick run for more supplies. Rita stood up and shut him down immediately, declaring that the party was over and it was time to hit the road. Leon's hovering by the bed, frantically asking if she's just worn out, but Rita shuts him down with a sharp look and tells him to listen up. When she shows up looking for an escape from her brutal day, he just smirks, knowing there's only one way to help her finally unwind. He gaped at her, completely blindsided. Rita gave her tail a playful swish, teasingly asking if he'd been waiting forever. Totally flustered, the guy stammered that he thought she'd already thanked him. The drinks were flowing, and the laughs were non-stop. But this wasn't just a thank you. It was the high-octane start to their vacation. She locked eyes with him, giving him a knowing look as she nestled deep into the sheets to get comfortable. She made it crystal clear that a simple meal was the only reward he was getting. Rita was stunned and demanded to know why she was being so stingy. But the guy just played it cool, saying that even a small gesture like that was plenty for him. Rita was totally confused, arguing that paying back a life-saving favor with just drinks and snacks was a total rip-off. Leon's caught completely off guard when he tells her he can't stand rude girls. But she surprisingly agrees, admitting her sisters gave her the same reality check, and maybe it's finally time for a total personality makeover. Rita cheers that she's a total knockout and a blast to talk to, but Leon just kills the mood, awkwardly stammering that he can't take responsibility for any of that. She burst out laughing, mockingly asking if he actually swallowed that crazy story, but Leon frantically waved his hands, shouting that he didn't mean it like that at all. Her face turned beet red as she stammered that it wasn't even a big deal, and it's not like she was asking for his hand in marriage or anything. Miriam's literally screaming that she wants to marry him, so Rita yanks the guy's arm and yells for him to stop overthinking it while he just shouts back in total confusion. She whispered that this was strictly for tonight, and Leon, caught completely off guard by her sudden boldness, pulled her into a tight embrace and buried his face against her. Just for this one, Rita confirms it's only a goofy guy and a girl, promising the whole mess will be history by sunrise. She's keeping a sharp eye while he's totally vibing with the chaos, and Leon gives her a firm nod of approval. She flopped onto the bed with a wild laugh, flashing a massive grin as she gave him the green light to move forward, while Leon turned beet red and locked eyes with her. He locks eyes with her and asks for a hug, sending Rita into a blushing frenzy as she stammers that since she's so grateful he can do whatever he wants, so he gives her his answer. Leon pulls her into a massive hug, leaving Rita totally flustered, and as he fixes her clothes and asks what she's starting to enjoy, she turns beet red and admits she's practically begging for him. Leon lunged forward and snatched Rita's tail right out of the air. She immediately went ballistic, screaming at him to quit it and let her go. Leon just played it cool, asking her what would happen if he didn't. Rita shouted a frantic warning about the consequences if he kept it up. Ignoring her completely, he doubled down and gave the tail a firm squeeze. She let out a piercing shriek, yelling that she'd already told him to stop. He demanded to know what it was, pressing her for the exact timing, but she could only stammer that since it was her first time, she wasn't really sure. He was absolutely stunned that she was finally admitting this for the very first time. Rita exploded, screaming right in his face and telling him to stop being so incredibly blunt. Leon then pipes up, asking if she's actually cool with him being her very first. She shouted back that if she hadn't taken a moment to rest, she would have literally died of embarrassment. Leon sees that every condition has finally been met, signaling the start of the Sage's era, while a totally drained Rita asks if they can just stay like this and rest. And when Leon gives her the green light, she's absolutely filled with gratitude. The sun finally cracked the horizon, signaling that their time was officially up. Leon's eyes snapped open as he frantically scanned the area, but the girl had completely vanished into thin air. His heart raced with pure hype, wondering where the heck Rita could have gone. Leon heads down the stairs and into the dining hall, where the bartender immediately smirks and asks if he enjoyed his wild night. Leon turns bright red and shouts back in total denial, but the guy just laughs it off, telling him not to sweat it because honestly, everyone needs a little fun right now. He drops a massive truth bomb. Rita has zero interest in men, and as Leon stands there in total shock, the guy points out she only recruits women for her squad, realizing he probably just said way too much. He let out a heavy sigh, admitting that everything had gone totally sideways, before pivoting to ask what we were having for dinner, and all we could do was nod and agree. He stepped out into the main hall but froze when someone shouted for Mr. Leon, making him spin around in absolute shock. She tells him the Lord actually left a thank you letter and asks to see his guild ID, but Leon just brushes her off, saying he's all good. She snatched up the card, shot the guy a look, and shouted a huge thanks for his patience, but then immediately demanded to verify his balance just to make sure he wasn't playing games. He checked the ID and his jaw hit the floor. There were 10 million credits just sitting there. The girl told him to sign right on the dotted line if the amount looked correct. He gave a quick nod, confirming that he was totally good to go. But then, Leon shifted uncomfortably and asked, "Wait, what about Miriam?" Pearl casually mentions she's basically just on a much-needed break. Leon's stunned, realizing that this simple explanation was the truth all along. He starts spiraling, convinced he's the one who messed up and drove her away. But she quickly shuts him down, insisting he's got absolutely nothing to feel guilty about. Turns out, she'd been grinding so hard that the guildmaster finally stepped in and forced her to take a vacation. She begged for forgiveness since her presence dragged his reputation through the mud, but he told her to treat him as an equal from now on. Leon thought he finally got the hint, and she thanked him with everything she had. He flashed a wide smirk, sensing a different motive, but Leon didn't hesitate. He stepped up and declared he was joining the expedition right this second. He looks at the royal tower and figures the sign looks pretty regal, but to him, it's basically just a strange picture. See, every tower has a unique letter carved into it that acts as its name, and that single letter actually dictates the name of the surrounding city and even the lord's family surname. As the guy kept arguing that they needed a proper starting point, Leon just flashed a wild grin and roared, "First floor, move out! We're taking this tower all the way to the top!" In this tower, your rank is everything. It literally dictates how high you can climb, and for a solo researcher like him, the 45th floor is the hard ceiling, especially since he was stuck at D rank just a while ago. He tried to claim that those special traits were finally fading because of his new limitations, but Lydia's brother didn't give a damn and went through with it anyway. He yanked the door open and marched straight into the unknown. He kicks off his solo grind from the ground floor to see if he can survive a long-term run. First things first, he's got to figure out exactly how far he can push his limits alone. Suddenly, a monster lunges out of the dark and charges right at the guy holding the torch. Without missing a beat, Leon screams that he's summoning a demonic arrow. He nails the beast right between the eyes, taking it down in a single shot. He snatches up the monster's tooth, satisfied that everything is going exactly as he planned. Honestly, when you're steamrolling weaklings like this, you don't even need to waste time on healing. Leon hits the 5th floor and comes face to face with a pack of monsters, but his jaw drops when he spots a werewolf. He can't believe he's already running into a boss at this level. He lunged from his seat and delivered a brutal strike straight to the werewolf's skull. Leaving the beast reeling, he immediately pivoted to tear through the smaller monsters. Leon didn't waste a single second either, finishing his target off in a total flash. He catches his breath while eyeing the loot spilling from the monsters, but as the werewolf steps up to challenge him, he charges forward and cleaves the beast clean in half. Our hero storms the 10th floor and absolutely obliterates every beast in sight, before charging straight to the 12th to wipe out the next wave, and then tearing through the 15th and 18th floors like they were absolutely nothing. Leon sweeps up every single award yet again, making it look effortless. He glances at his watch and realizes he's been on this grind for 2 solid hours. Honestly, he's feeling pretty good about how things are going. But then his stomach lets out a massive growl, signaling it's finally time to take a breather and grab some food. Leon hits the safe zone and runs straight into a 5-man squad, but he can barely choke out a hi because he's totally weirded out by their vibe. He stayed dead silent while Leon stepped aside to rip open his inventory, scanning his gear with laser focus as he realized, okay, this is the play. He set it on the ground and whipped out some tea and a hot dog. He took a long, steaming sip and let out a sigh of pure bliss. He grabbed a bite, totally ready to satisfy his massive hunger. Suddenly, someone approaches and asks him what kind of treats he's hiding. He looked up and locked eyes with a rival, nodding like he'd already called it. A newcomer mentioned how delicious the food looked, but his teammates immediately started clowning him, screaming that he was a total pushover. Leon scowled in total confusion, but when the guy asked if he was all by himself, Leon just turned to his new crew to get the conversation started, asking exactly what kind of tea he was brewing. Leon just nodded, confirming he had the goods. The guy started acting all awkward, stuttering that he'd love a sip if it wasn't too much of a hassle. But Leon cut him off mid-sentence, saying it was no sweat and that he needed a drink anyway. He snatched up a cup with a massive grin, shouting that this was exactly what the team needed. That totals 100. The guy tosses him a coin, and Leon bellows out a massive thank you, realizing that in this tower, You never get something for nothing. Every single exchange demands a price. He explained that things got absolutely wild the other day when he was out there distributing water like a madman, which actually earned him a massive award and totally leveled up his relationship with Rita. He told everyone the drinks were on him and they could have whatever they wanted, and when they looked shocked, he screamed that he was dead serious while thanking them for everything. One of the guys mentioned how steaming hot the tea was, and she agreed, totally vibing with the incredible aroma, while Leon just flashed a grin and told them to help themselves to as much as they wanted. They snatched up their gear and bolted for the exit, as the guy yelled that their moment had finally arrived. But they weren't leaving without showing some massive gratitude, to which Leon simply told them to go out there and give it their absolute all. Leon lets out a massive stretch, flashing a grin as he admits he's totally ready to crash. He sloshes water from a barrel into his kettle and uses his powers to bring it to a boil instantly. Finally, he whips up a quick cup of tea to wind down. He yanked out his sleeping bag, threw it across the floor, and dove right in, passing out the second his eyes shut because he was absolutely drained from the day. The intel finally drops, and Leon storms the 30th floor to start shredding through monsters, realizing his basic soldier class is hitting a wall and it's time to go absolutely nuclear. He beat his chest, declaring that true power comes from mastering the body, the heart, and the arcane, and after completely obliterating every last monster, he finally headed back to fuel up and catch some much-needed Z's. Day 3 of the research mission is officially underway. Leo collapses onto the floor and pours himself a steaming cup of coffee. With a smirk, he knows this caffeine is the only thing that'll jumpstart his brain. Right now, he's chilling in the 35th floor safe zone, far from the chaos. This werewolf was an absolute beast, but he parried the strike with his blade, realizing this monster fought with the precision of a veteran soldier just as the guy roared at the top of his lungs to summon a massive electric discharge. Leon hits the 40th floor and comes face to face with a powerhouse boss, but he absolutely dismantles the guy before taking a breather and realizing this level is going to be swarming with high-tier monsters. He decided to take a much-needed breather outside the tower, earning a supportive grin from the guild employee who praised his hard work while reminding him to keep his body in peak fighting shape. Everyone was losing their minds because clearing 40 floors in just 3 days is absolute insanity. But Leon just scratched his head awkwardly and started scanning the room for someone. Miriam was still totally out of commission, dead to the world. Leon just shrugged, basically saying, "Yeah, it is what it is." She hands him a mysterious card, calling it a little thank you for when he eventually returns. Leon tells her he's going to need a solid 2 days of rest before he's ready to move again. She just smiles and says, "That's perfectly fine. She'll be right there waiting for him." Staring up at the shimmering stars, Leon realized the world had gone pitch black, so he finally decided to call it a night and get some much-needed rest. He headed back to their usual spot to meet his girl, where Amelia greeted him with a massive grin and teased that he just couldn't stay away. She clings to him, desperate to know if he finally kept his word. She squeezes him right back, her heart overflowing with pure relief. He pulls away, joking that he hasn't touched a drop of soap in over 3 days. She just laughs and tells him to hit the shower before they do anything else. Amelia wakes up to see Leon beaming at her, but when she realizes how bright it is, he just grins and admits they've officially slept the morning away. She squeezed him tight, teasing that they must have been sharing a bed the whole time, and while Amelia was thrilled to hear it, she admitted she's going to need another 2 or 3 days of rest before she's back on her feet. Magic definitely makes everything way more intense, and even though I was left totally paralyzed after our last encounter, she just shrugged it off and insisted she's doing just fine. Amelia locked eyes with him and flashed a sweet smile, shyly admitting he's the only one who could pull that off, while Leon beamed back, absolutely stoked to hear it. He pulled away, telling her she'd better start getting ready. Amelia was caught off guard, asking if he was really heading out already. He just shrugged, telling her it was definitely time for him to hit the road. Leon and his companion finally arrived at the guild hall. The girl behind the counter beamed and gave them a warm welcome. Leon wasted no time telling her he was there to sign up. But suddenly a voice from across the room shouted his name. He looks up to see Lydia standing there with a huge smile, asking how he's been after all this time, and since he's clearly in high spirits, he just grins back and says, "Yeah, you could say that." They were both signing up to conquer the massive tower. Lydia agreed, but she insisted on having a private word with him first. Completely blindsided, he asked her what could possibly be the problem. She confirmed she was dead serious and marched right into his personal space. She puffed out her chest and flashed a huge grin, asking to join his squad, and Leon was floored by how fast the tables had turned. She locked eyes with Leon and practically begged him to join her squad, leaving him blushing like a tomato and totally stunned by the sudden invitation. Needing a private spot to talk, they ducked into the furthest table in the back where Leon gushed his thanks for the invite, even though he was secretly feeling a massive wave of doubt. He stammers out a confused question, wondering if he's even cut out for her squad, but Lydia just flashes a confident grin and tells him he's the perfect fit. So that's the whole story. And after thanking her for the support, Lydia looks him in the eye with a nervous blush, practically begging him to accept the invitation. He looked her in the eye and asked the big question. Who else was actually on the guest list? Lydia dropped the bombshell that it was just him, assuming he was cool with a little one-on-one time. Leon cut her off with a confident smirk, asking if she was really just banking on his sage powers to save the day. She looked away, blushing hard, and muttered that it was only 2. But Leon brushed it off and demanded to know if she was actually ready for the Baron. She threw her head back and shouted that she was all good, fully prepared to never return just like her adventurer, telling him he didn't have to worry about a thing. That's just the way it goes, but she's already prepping a replacement. Lydia flashes a grin, revealing she's handing the reins to her big brother, especially since her other brother is finally about to make his grand return. Lydia reveals her brother is a wandering adventurer just like their dad, but he's been on the move ever since he heard his father's squad was wiped out, ending the old man's career for good. Carol beams with excitement, declaring she's taking up her father's mantle to become a hero, leaving Leon absolutely stunned by her massive goal. He remembered leaving his village for the city with dreams of becoming a legend, and after teaming up with Wolf, he was sure he'd finally get his big break. But while everyone else was hitting god-tier levels, he was just getting left in the dust. He kept spiraling, convinced he was helpless without his crew, but being solo actually forced him to evolve and master a style that was uniquely his own. Sure, city life seemed fine at first, but Leon leaned in with a wild look in his eyes, asking her point-blank if she honestly believed she could become a hero. She locked eyes with him and shouted that they'd definitely pull it off, leaving Leon absolutely stunned by her sudden, ironclad resolve. By himself, he was a master red mage, but with her by his side, he'd ascend to the level of a sage and finally start dreaming of the future again, exactly like Leon and she promised. She put it all on the line and asked him to join her, and once Leon admitted he'd love to travel with Lydia, her entire face lit up with pure joy. He flashes a grin, telling her he wants to reach the top as a hero right by her side. Hearing that, Lydia's face beams with pure joy. He then asks the big question, has she already thought of a name for their team? She admits she's actually got one ready, a name she's been holding on to for a long, long time. She jabs a finger right at him and bellows their new title, Incomparable Ultimate Determination, looking absolutely stoked that she came up with something so legendary. The name clicked for him, and Lydia let out a victory cry, swearing that they'd be totally invincible and become the absolute best adventurers in the game. This was the ultimate resolve. Lydia beamed with pure hype, shouting that they were destined to become legends. Leon was totally lost and asked her what she meant by ultimate determination. But Lydia just smirked and asked him what he hated most. Lydia's totally lost on what he means by limits, but he fires back that if they're going all out, they might as well aim for the absolute peak, leaving her completely floored. He looked Lydia dead in the eye and promised they'd conquer Onyu, the most brutal tower on the continent, and she was absolutely hyped to join him. She throws her arms around his neck, screaming that it's absolutely amazing, while a totally flustered Leon begs her to stop before the entire crowd starts staring. The guild receptionist beams as she confirms their team is officially a go, but since it's just a duo, Lydia and Leon are stuck starting out at rank C. He turned to the girl, explaining that this legendary, unmatched resolve actually kicks in at rank D. Then Lydia and Leon headed to the dining hall to map out their next move. so they could huddle up and plot their next big move. First off, their eyes are on the ultimate prize, becoming legendary heroes. From here on out, they've got to conquer towers across every single region, but there's one massive catch they have to handle first. Taking over the Queen Tower was the only option, especially since Lydia revealed her brother had issued a terrifying ultimatum. She either conquers that tower or faces a punishment she'll never forget. Ryan drops a truth bomb. If they can't conquer the Queen Tower, they can forget about even looking at the Unu Tower. At this point, it's not a test of strength, but a race against the brutal rank restrictions of each level. Lydia just gives a firm nod, totally on board with the plan. D rankers are hard capped at the 40th floor, but since our guys leveled up to C rank, they've got the green light to push all the way to floor 49, though floor 50 is still way out of their league. He dropped the bombshell that to storm the top floor. They're missing one final key, so now the squad is going all in to skyrocket their team rank and get it done. He figured they'd just keep grinding to skyrocket their fame, but Lydia immediately shot him down, pointing out that their tiny squad and weak classes were a recipe for disaster. Basically, your rank is a direct measure of your power, but it's a total numbers game. The more members you pack into your party, the higher your rating skyrockets. He hung his head in shame, confessing he was a red magician and begging for mercy, but Lydia just shouted that it was totally fine. Balin isn't that scary, and they can definitely take him. She beams at him, shouting that they'd blitz through everything if they just evolved to a higher class. Leon's totally hooked and asks her what level she's actually rocking. She drops the bombshell. She's already sitting at level 39. They grinned and decided to hold off, knowing that if they hit the level cap first, their power will absolutely skyrocket the second they finally rank up. He warned them that if they truly want to be heroes, they need to focus on growing stronger first, because once you lock in a class upgrade, there's no hitting the undo button. And Lydia knew he was dead right. Climbing the ranks as a duo was taking way too long, so our guy threw his head back and asked if he could just bring in more teammates to speed things up. They said it was totally doable with 2 C rankers, but adding even more would change the game. And as the girl's face turns beet red, Leon is left completely stunned. His face lit up as he realized that with a squad this massive, they could totally steamroll the tower and he could stay a red magician. But while Lydia awkwardly brought up his future as a sage, Leon stepped in to promise that once the raid was finished and they were a duo again, his rank would stay exactly where it was. They were absolutely hyped to finally get the dream team back together. She leaned in close, her face lighting up with a massive, beaming grin. But then she realized she was being way too loud and awkwardly cleared her throat, totally embarrassed. She clarifies it's not just about being alone with him. If they need to grow the squad and he trusts the newcomers, she's all in because she's dying to see them finally take the stage. He explains that for their next teammate, he's hunting for a C-rank support with a high-level class, but finding someone that perfect is way harder than it sounds. Rita saunters over with a playful smirk, teasing that she couldn't help but overhear their juicy conversation, leaving Leon beet red as he realizes that in this city, everyone's always watching. She literally sprouted from a chaotic, explosive flower, and Rita just flashed a smirk, knowing they were desperately hunting for an ally who could spill the real secrets. She flashed a grin that practically screamed they needed backup, and Leon leaned in with pure hype, dying to know what she meant since he never expected a question like that to come from her. Rita flashes a massive grin, explaining they were just roaming the city center before hitting up the guild. But Lydia's jaw drops as she realizes it's just the two of them, and that guy from the chaotic explosive flower. Back at the hospital, Lydia excitedly asks if things are looking grim, but the girl reassures her they're actually in peak condition, so healthy that the doctor didn't even give them a prescription. If it weren't for that guild contract, they'd have been healed in the tower ages ago. And while Lydia demands to know why they're being held back, Rita's friend tells her to drop the lecture already. Thanks to Leon's miracle meds, her wounds vanished instantly, letting her sprint back into the action after a quick breather while Leon shouts out in shock that she's the scout from before. She flashes a grin, realizing she totally forgot to introduce herself. Her name's Maya, by the way. Leon gets all flustered and calls her Ms. Maya, but she just laughs it off, telling him just Maya is more than enough. Leon and Lydia pointed out the 2 macaws, But when the girl skeptically demanded to know what was so perfect about the situation, the couple could only stare at her in pure shock. Stuck on tower duty, the guard let out a massive yawn, absolutely dying of boredom from standing around, until he spotted some familiar faces and flashed a grin, letting them know he was doing just fine. He grabbed the guy by the neck with a massive grin, joking about his lonely days before dragging over 3 total beauties and slapping him on the back, yelling at him to keep a close watch. He flashed a massive grin and roared, "All right, guys, it's time to head out on an expedition." But let's be real. A total nobody taking charge like a main character is just asking for trouble. She looked over at Leon and asked, "Hey, can you actually handle the wheel?" Completely blindsided, the guy stuttered out, "Wait, what do you think you're even doing?" She pointed Lydia out as the leader, gasping that she possessed a legendary, unshakable will, while Leon's jaw hit the floor as he demanded to know how she ended up in charge. She flashed a wide grin, insisting he was the perfect fit, but Leon could only stammer out that he was just a low-born red mage. She screamed at the top of her lungs that none of it even mattered. After all, she only survived that suicide mission because she followed his orders to a T. Leon felt a knot in his stomach, realizing she was being totally selfish. A leader's gotta lead from the front, and while Rita smiles because that's just classic her, Maya grumbles that her sister is a total hothead who always charges in without a single plan. He figured that by stepping back, he could analyze the chaos and bark out the perfect orders, and she's 100% sure he's the right man to lead them to victory. She kept gushing about how he'd absolutely dominate the vanguard, convinced he's a natural-born leader as she stared at Leon with pure hype in her eyes. Leon roared that he was all in, while Lydia smugly revealed she'd already applied anyway, leaving him to shout that this was all about heart and pure passion. He cleared his throat and barked that it was time to move, as Leon stepped out in front of the girls to boldly declare they were charging straight into the 41st floor. Deep on the 41st floor, the stakes have never been higher. Rita glares at the monsters and screams for the sixes to rally to her side immediately. She puts her entire weight behind her massive shield and slams it into a beast with bone-shattering force. She hauled back her hammer and let it rip, but the beast barely scrambled away in a desperate attempt to escape. Maya was way too fast, though, circling behind the creature and mocking its pathetic speed before plunging her blade straight into its throat. He lunges at the next beast, screaming at the top of his lungs that he's calling down the thunder. A massive pillar of electricity slams into the monster, absolutely frying it on the spot. He snaps his head up, eyes glowing with pure hype as he stares down his next target. He faced the beast with a smirk, daring it to defend itself, while she locked eyes with the massive brute and roared that the orc general was her prey. Just as a random monster pops up in front of the orc general who's busy playing bodyguard, Lydia lets out a frustrated scream and smacks him aside for getting in her way. The general let out a guttural roar as he hoisted his massive weapon high into the air. Leon screamed at the top of his lungs, calling down a devastating bolt of lightning from the heavens. Maya whipped a dagger straight into his shoulder, but the general didn't even flinch. Lydia lunges at the orc general with a deafening war cry, but the beast slips away, snatching her spear mid-thrust and jamming it right back at her before she can even blink. She braced her massive shield and tanked the orc general's crushing blow, giving Lydia the perfect opening to strike while the monster was distracted by her friend. They harvested the orcs for every scrap of meat and bone while Lydia screamed at the top of her lungs that they'd won. But Leon was already dreading the 4 nights and 5 days left in this grueling expedition. He figured it was all because they'd recruited Rita and Maya, and now this legendary C-rank crew has the green light to push their expedition all the way to the 49th floor. After wolfing down some food, they absolutely blitzed through the levels, hitting floor 44 on day 1, 47 on day 2, and reaching the 50th floor stairs by day 3, before finally looping back to the 41st floor 2 days later to warp home. They finally hit the 44th floor, which was a total safe zone. Rita flashed a grin and asked how they were going to split everyone up. Leon reminded her that with 4 people, they had the perfect numbers for a plan. He split them into pairs, so 2 could crash and rest while the others stayed on high alert. Lydia just smiled and asked what she could start divvying up for the rest of the group. She hyped them up, demanding the princess and Leon sleep together because it just wasn't fair. making Lydia shriek in pure embarrassment while the girls shared a knowing look. Rita teases her about being alone with Leon, sending Lydia into a blushing mess, but Rita just geeks out over the male-female adventurer dynamic, basically saying it's fate and there's no avoiding it. And they totally were. Lydia's face turned beet red as she stammered, "What?" But Maya just grinned and shouted that, "Oh, by the way, the self-defense forces had just finished patrolling the upper floors." Leon questioned what the self-defense forces were, and even though Rita said she knew the score, he warned her that they were walking straight into a massive, life-threatening disaster. He shoots her a sly grin and asks, what if he just stayed with Maya, making her lose her mind at the thought of those two being locked in a room all by themselves? With a smirk, she corrected him that Rita and Lydia were bunking together, so they weren't exactly alone. Maya let out a heavy sigh and agreed it was the best move, while he eagerly demanded to know what happened, only for her to shrug it off and say everything was totally fine. She collapses straight into Rita's arms as Rita holds her close, promising she's never going anywhere. All while the girl breaks down in tears, desperately begging for forgiveness. He gently pats her head, telling her she has nothing to apologize for, while Maya pulls her into a crushing hug and whispers over and over that everything is finally okay. Rita turns to Leon, asking if he's actually cool with pulling the solo night shift. Leon doesn't even blink, telling her he's got it covered, no problem at all. Still, Rita's worried, so she double-checks to see if the princess is down with this plan. Lydia gives the green light, saying it's fine as long as Leon's okay with the extra work. With a quick thank you, they finally settle in to get some shut-eye for the night. Rita collapsed onto the bed right beside Maya, and after the absolute nightmare of a day they'd just survived, they both passed out instantly while Leon silently took his post to keep watch. He suddenly remembered the bartender's gossip about that girl from the chaotic flower squad having a messy history with some guy, but he quickly shook his head to snap himself out of it. Just as Rita finally started to stir back to life, she walked over with a warm grin and told him it was high time he hit the hay. He didn't argue, heading straight for his sleeping bag and sliding right in. The guy was out like a light before his head even hit the pillow. But out of nowhere, a mysterious voice started calling out to him through the darkness, and right there, staring back at him, was Lydia. She flashed a bright smile, chirping that it was already 6 a.m. and high time to crawl out of bed. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and managed a groggy, "Good morning." She shot back a cheerful greeting of her own. That's when Leon's eyes drifted over to the rest of the girls. She hands him a steaming mug of tea and apologizes for yesterday's mess, but Leon just flashes a grin, saying he's feeling fresh after some solid rest, secretly relieved that she's finally chilled out. Rita drops down right beside him, offering a fresh cup of coffee to kickstart the morning. Leon crawls out of his sleeping bag and gratefully accepts, finally feeling human again. He honestly thought the mission was going perfectly, with zero problems in sight. Everything went exactly according to plan. And by the evening of the 5th day, the entire squad marched back into the guild without a single scratch on them. The guild girl looked absolutely crushed as she begged for forgiveness, dropping the bombshell that they were barred from reaching the 50th floor, leaving Leon shouting in total disbelief. The prestige from this expedition? Yeah, it was nowhere near enough. The guy spoke up, asking if they could just double back for another run, but she just shook her head, telling him her hands were completely tied. Leon looked up with a glimmer of hope, asking if they were finally heading back to the duet. With a nervous grin, the clerk blurted out that their team was officially rank D, so the squad headed outside to figure out their next move. With their friends finally bouncing back, he suggested recruiting some fresh blood, but Leon shot him down, warning that a bigger team would just tank their score, so for now, he's sticking to scouting the competition. They threatened to stir up some serious trouble, but Rita didn't flinch, admitting they'd probably have to pay them another visit soon. Leon just flashed a confident smirk, vowing that by the time they met again, he'd finally claw his way up to that legendary C rank. She frantically shouted for her sister, but when Rita pressed for details, the girl started tripping over her words before suddenly cutting herself off and yelling that it was absolutely nothing. She whipped her head around to burn a hole through Leon with her stare, leaving Rita cringing in the corner, while Leon, totally oblivious to the tension, just told them they could finally kick back and rest tomorrow. They locked in their plans to regroup at the guild in 2 days, and once Rita confirmed she was ready, Lydia flashed a satisfied grin before the couple waved goodbye to Maya and Rita and finally headed home. Maya hits him with a look of pure disgust and whips around, leaving our guy standing there in the dead of night scratching his head, completely clueless about what he did wrong. Leon didn't waste a second and got right back to his daily routine. He hit up the butcher shop before swinging by the vendor to stock up on drinks. With his errands done, Leon finally headed into the dining hall to grab a much-needed meal. But right as he sat down, the bartender dropped a bombshell. He had a visitor. Leon was totally blindsided, asking who on earth would be looking for him. The bartender just pointed over to a mysterious figure sitting way back in the corner. The guy asks if the evening glow is a bother, but when Leon shrugs it off, he gets teased for being a total ladies' man. Leon awkwardly stammers that she's just a fellow adventurer, then finally heads over to give Maya a casual hello. Her face instantly lights up with pure excitement as she beams, "Oh, good evening." He dropped down in front of Maya, asking what was eating at her today. She was practically vibrating with energy, telling him she'd been dying for a chance to talk. He locked in, hanging on her every word. Leon tried to suggest they grab a bite together since it was dinner time, but she completely shut him down, screaming that she'd already eaten and he was on his own. She slid the feast onto the table with a beaming smile, thanking them for their patience, and when Maya asked for another round, she didn't hesitate to say yes. He calls for a bottle and a glass. The waitress promises to handle it right away, and Maya practically beams as she shouts that the drinks are on her. Flashing a grin, she insisted on footing the bill herself, but Maya shyly blurted out a protest, begging him to just hear her out, only for Leon to cut the tension by calling for a toast. Maya topped off her glass and told him to just focus on his food. But then she started slamming drinks back to back, leaving the guy staring in absolute shock. As they scarfed down their food, Maya frantically apologized for rushing him, but Leon just flashed a grin and told her that speed is a survival skill for any real adventurer. Red rushes up to Maya, practically vibrating as he asks if she's holding up okay. She gives him a total, "I'm done" look and sighs that she's fine, but he's already moving on. He immediately starts grilling her, demanding to know what she actually knows about her own squad. This legendary all-girls squad boasts a massive legacy spanning over 50 years. Leon discovers that the powerhouse Rita is currently calling the shots as their 5th-generation leader. She tells him that every girl in the city is practically begging for a chance to join their elite ranks. He flashed a knowing smirk, and while a flustered Maya stammered out a yes, she suddenly went dead silent and started chugging straight from the bottle, leaving the guy screaming in total shock that she stared him down and shouted that they needed to get to his room immediately. But a hyped-up Leon wondered why they couldn't just spill everything right where they stood. She awkwardly stammered that she didn't want any eavesdroppers, and while he was totally caught off guard, he rolled with it and led her straight to his room. Leon collapsed onto the bed with a heavy sigh, his mind racing back to his encounter with Rita in this very room. He was dead certain that things between them were about to go way beyond just talking. It turns out this guy was a veteran from a completely different tower, and since she was just a wide-eyed rookie, he offered to take her under his wing the moment they met. Maya was riding a massive high as her rank skyrocketed in just a few days, fueling her ego until she felt untouchable. But then, he suddenly started dragging her straight into the tower's deadly middle levels. Even on a basic floor crawling with monsters, safety was a total joke, especially when he slammed her against the wall and pinned her down so she couldn't even think about running. He threatened to ditch her right then and there if she didn't fall in line, and Maya knew that surviving this hellhole alone was a straight-up death sentence. If there was even a breath of air, she might have stood a chance, but she finally snapped and started fighting back with everything she had. He had her pinned so hard she couldn't even flinch, and just as Maya accepted her fate, he burst onto the scene and cracked a baton right over the villain's skull. This soldier is a straight-up lizard man, and since she can't even handle a captain right now, she's got absolutely zero chance against a monster of his level. She clutched her ears, paralyzed by the fear that she was about to die, when suddenly a pair of arms wrapped around her in a crushing hug. It was Rita, and the girl could only sob an apology for being so late. Turns out this creep had been hunting adventurers for ages, and since the guild was clearly dirty and the victim wouldn't talk, She decided to let chaotic explosive flower handle the dirty work. Rita flashed a sheepish grin as she apologized for the delay, thanking her sister for holding it down. After the squad literally pulled her back from the brink, she officially joined the team to fight by their side. She collapsed to her knees, insisting that nothing had changed. But while she hoped to jump right back into her life as an adventurer, she's now left with a crippling fear of men. She's definitely doing better now. But at first, just catching a glimpse of a man would send her spiraling back to that nightmare until she was literally gasping for air. She's finally found her voice around guys, as long as her squad is there to back her up. But the second they're alone, she completely freezes up in pure terror. He asks if they're finally alone, and with a massive grin, Maya promises him that everything is perfect now. They've conquered so many horizons together, and even his sister knows he's the most legendary adventurer you can trust. She choked out an apology, but it was a total sham. He knew if he even twitched, she'd start shrieking. And let's be real, if she hadn't been hitting the bottle, she wouldn't have said a single word at dinner. After failing time and time again, Leon's eyes lit up as he realized this was the perfect moment to finally spill the truth. But then Maya's voice suddenly boomed his name. She screams for them to hold on tight, realizing that wanting to be strong isn't enough. She has to evolve, vowing to shatter her fear of men and finally claim the power she's been chasing. She swears she had no other choice, and while she's begging for his forgiveness, she knows he doesn't owe her a thing. Honestly, she's just shocked he even let her set foot in his room today. She looks up to find Leon looming right over her and lets out a massive shriek. But the guy just flashes a huge grin and asks how he can help, leaving her absolutely dying of embarrassment. She gripped the bedspread and shouted, "Of course!" with total hype, but Leon just smirked, telling her to quit acting tough if she was actually terrified. He stepped right into her space and commanded her to look right here. She shrieked in pure terror because he was way too close for comfort. But as she tried to turn away, Leon just leaned in closer and asked if she really wanted him to have his fun, and she actually told him yes. He asked if she was truly ready, and a blushing Maya gushed about how sweet Leon was for not rushing her, swearing that she didn't feel pressured one bit. He doubled down with total confidence, insisting that this was the only way. To her, this was just another massive hurdle she had to smash through. She begs for his forgiveness, but he's basically a human wall blocking her path. Totally lost, she asks him what her next move is even supposed to be. Leon just plays it cool and suggests they start by simply holding hands. Everything was fine, she just had to reach out. Leon grabbed her hand and whispered about how warm she felt, and while she played it off as the alcohol talking, he told her to close her eyes. And she actually listened. He lunges forward and snatches a lightning-fast kiss, leaving her face glowing bright red as he smugly asks how her first kiss felt, only for her to stammer back in total confusion that she was just with a man. He pulls her in tight, his voice frantic as he asks if she's really all right. Tears stream down her face as she confesses she let that guy lay a hand on her. But then she looks at him and says it's fine. They can go all the way tonight. He whipped around to face her, his eyes practically beaming with pure excitement. But the girl just hung her head, desperately begging for his forgiveness. Leon smirked, asking if she was actually losing sleep over his safety. And with a blush, she admitted that, yeah, she was worried sick about him. He cracked a smile at her totally bizarre way of getting used to guys, asking if they hadn't already pushed things far enough. He paused to weigh her words while Leon awkwardly piped up to ask what she meant. But the girl just spun around and told Tinsley it was finally time to head for the tower. Leon knew the tower didn't have a closing time, and with monsters prowling the halls 24/7, the place is a total death trap no matter when you step inside. You quickly realize that whether you're out adventuring or grinding for a guild, the real hustle always goes down in those frantic hours right before dawn and just after sunset. Until the sun comes up, the shop is strictly limited to gear restocks and search requests. Maya rushes over to the guy, frantically apologizing for being so late. He rushed over, buzzing with energy as he asked her how she was holding up. But man, her walk was stiff and totally unnatural. Maya gave a strained smile, admitting it still stung but insisting she was doing just fine. He announces that the 21st floor expedition is officially greenlit, warning them to keep their heads on a swivel because if they make it back before midnight, They're stuck outside the city gates until sunrise. Stepping out, the grinning guy pointed out they still had a 4-hour window before Lydia and the crew arrived, but she shut him down immediately, saying they'd already seen more than enough. They finally storm their way onto the 21st floor. Maya looks him in the eye and asks if he'll heal her up. He hesitates, reminding her that the guild has a dead serious ban on treating wounds inside the tower. But he doesn't give a damn about the rules and patches her up anyway. Maya just smirks, revealing that her application was already greenlit, so they're totally in the clear. On the 25th floor, Leon points toward the corridor as their path to the top, but Maya confidently takes the lead, stopping dead in front of a wall and declaring they've finally arrived. Pointing to the wall, she explains that this was the exact spot he attacked her. But after leaning her forehead against the surface, she turns back and asks for a hug right then and there as they both share a heartwarming smile. They've got to move fast to see what's inside, but Leon is totally floored by her sudden bold streak, especially since Maya just dropped the bombshell that he's the very first guy she's ever been with. Let's be real. Stepping back into this place was straight-up nightmare fuel. The second they hit this floor, those dark memories came flooding back like a tidal wave, and she had to wrap her arms around herself just to keep from falling apart. She tells him it was agonizing and terrifying, but the biggest sting was the pure disrespect. She flashes a cold smile and basically tells him to suck it up and move on. He's on his knees begging for mercy, but she just turns around and plays him like a fiddle again. Everything was finally chill, and Maya just flashed a smirk, saying that the thought of what she's about to do to him makes all the hell she went through completely irrelevant. Just being here with him completely wiped away every nightmare she'd ever endured in this place. And as he locked eyes with her, he hung on her every single word. He stepped up and told her the time was now, pulling her into a hug so sudden that Maya screamed, shocked by how intense everything felt. He explained that his support magic was cranking her emotions to the max, and she was absolutely loving every second of it. Leon promised he'd wipe away every single one of her painful memories for good. He pulled her into a crushing hug, swearing that she could lean on him no matter what. But suddenly, the girl let out a piercing scream that shattered the silence. Leon froze in terror, convinced that he'd just triggered her worst nightmare. He pressed his hand against her stomach and unleashed his healing power, and as Maya finally caught her breath, trembling because she thought she was a goner, he apologized, warning her that as her senses returned, the pain was only going to get sharper. She flashes a knowing smirk, making it clear she's totally on the same page. Then, she playfully suggests they just keep things sweet and focus on the fun parts. Leon grins right back, promising that if anything starts to sting, he'll be there to heal her instantly. She shouts for him to bring it on, because all the conditions are finally met and Sage Mode is officially activated. He swept her up and rushed through the corridors, grinning as he told Maya it was time to wake up. And after a quick yawn, she started screaming about everything that just went down. They hit the 21st floor portal with massive grins right as time ran out, while the girl started shouting at the top of her lungs, begging him for forgiveness. She sheepishly apologized again, looking totally embarrassed. Then she questioned why he'd been flying solo before showing up there. Leon just flashed a grin, telling her she looked so peaceful he didn't have the heart to wake her up. But she wasn't having it, huffing that the whole situation was a massive failure. She fumbled through her words just to get his attention, practically vibrating as she asked about that insane middle part. But you could tell something was seriously eating at her. Recalling exactly what the sage had earned, he funneled that support magic into a bone-crushing hug, and as she teased that he'd finally developed a taste for her sweetness, Maya announced it was time to head home. They cashed in their loot at the guild and headed out, where a hyped-up Leon asked if she was truly happy by his side, and she shyly admitted that. He buffs her up with support magic, but she still can't stand those creepy lizards, and while she's usually a nervous wreck around other soldiers, she's actually super chill whenever he's around. She was convinced he'd put a literal spell on her back then, and honestly, your heart just melts seeing him and his sister go above and beyond to save everyone, his bros, Lydia, and even the side characters. She beamed at him, fully convinced he was the dependable guy her sister needed, and handed him her complete trust. But let's be real, trying to keep up with her was turning into a total nightmare for him. Without missing a beat, he just straight up shut her down. Maya declared she was finally hitting the road, thanking him for everything, but she made it clear she had a lot more to say. He flashed a confident grin, asking if he should keep pushing forward. Right then, Leon's mind flashed back to that deep talk he had with Lydia. They'd sworn to become legendary heroes and absolutely crush every floor of the Unu Tower. He didn't hesitate for a second, giving her a rock-solid yes. Maya then told him he'd better bring his sister along for the journey. After all, she's far from a pro-adventurer who's already cleared every quest in this city. If he truly plans on becoming a legendary hero, he's going to need every ounce of strength he can get. She slammed into a deep bow, desperately screaming for him to take her sister along, while Leon frantically waved his arms and yelled, "Wait, what are you doing?" She flashed a grin, telling him to chew on her offer and get back to her, then waved and shouted that she'd see him tomorrow before bolting away, leaving Leon totally speechless. The whole squad gathers back at the guild hall, where Rita shoots Maya a total death glare for being late, but Maya just flashes a cheeky smile and brushes it off like it's no big deal. All right, everyone take a breather. There's no reason to freak out just yet. Leon suggests they fuel up with a quick meal before deciding their next big play, but Maya isn't having it, screaming at him to stop right in his tracks. When they wonder what to check out first, Rita's stunned by how weird she's being. Lydia thinks the whole thing is total nonsense, and Maya's literally screaming because she wants them so badly. The guild staff dropped the bombshell that they were finally cleared to dive straight into the 50th floor. Leon was totally stunned, demanding to know why the hell nothing had actually changed. The girl simply revealed that they'd recruited another heavy hitter with an elite-level class to the squad. And as if things weren't wild enough, another massive shockwave hits the room. Every eye in the place snaps straight to Maya. She just flashes a cheeky grin and reveals she hit up the guild at the crack of dawn. Turns out, she officially traded her old life to become a deadly assassin. She shouted for the world to hear that she'd only just hit level 35. Maya just smirked, wondering why she was acting so stressed out. If they just sit around, they're never going to reach that level 99 cap. They need to hustle and unlock those high-tier professions right now. She might have been right, but Leon could feel it in his bones. Something was seriously wrong. Leon argued that even if she became an assassin at level 1, he'd still be no better than a basic scout. Maya insisted she'd already explained the whole situation to them, but Lydia cut her off, suggesting that maybe she was just running late. Grinning from ear to ear, she storms the tower and rockets all the way to level 10, and Lydia totally gets it, because even with a top-tier class, those early levels are a total breeze. Plus, the power and reputation gap between a level 10 assassin and a level 45 scout is absolutely massive. Rita starts losing her mind because she headed to the tower solo, but suddenly, a girl pops out of nowhere and claims she's the one who actually helped her out. Leon spins around and spots two girls, realizing with a shock that these are the exact same mage and priest from that insane flower blast. One of them insists they charge into the tower while the chaos is still fresh, while the other adds that their timing couldn't be more perfect. Calling it a golden opportunity, the pastor roared about their brand new high-level classes, leaving a stunned Rita wondering how they even found the time to pull that off. Sister just smiles, knowing this new generation is about to take the torch, but Rita snaps that they're still just kids and drags everyone to the dining room to talk strategy. She pours out her gratitude, but Maya just brushes it off, reminding her that it's finally time to carry the weight of the chaotic explosive flower's name. He locked his eyes right on the girls. Maya caught him looking and fired back with a gaze full of confidence. The archmage and the pastor dropped into a deep bow as Leon strolled past. Leon was totally floored. He never saw that coming. They sat down and started devouring their food, but Leon was clearly stressing over Maya's low level in her new job, so Rita suggested they just push back their schedule and stay on the road longer. If you're looking to maximize your grind, the 49th floor is the ultimate sweet spot. And Lydia promises that once they hit the 50th, the return portal kicks in, so they've got a guaranteed way out. He bolted upright with a roar, sealing their fate, as he glanced at the girls and realized they were in for a grueling 5-day, 4-night journey. Aiming straight for the 50th floor, the crew kicked off their raid at floor 41, And even though Maya had just swapped classes, she was already hitting like a total beast. Everything went so perfectly that they actually crushed their day one goal way ahead of schedule. The expedition finally makes it home, and Maya flashes a grin, admitting she was so exhausted she slept like a rock. Which makes total sense to Leon, considering she was pushing herself until dawn just 2 days ago. They can bicker all they want, but the chaos was real. And after a frantic morning of rushing through her classes, she's already diving headfirst into a grueling new mission with a schedule from hell. He shouts a warning that something's lurking just around the bend, a lizard general leading a full-blown army, leaving Lydia absolutely stunned that he could sense them from this far away. The girl beamed, giving all the credit to her insane support buffs. Leon wasn't buying it, though. He knew that power-up came straight from his class change. Rita rushed over, frantically checking to see if she was still in one piece. Maya just brushed it off, insisting she was totally fine. It's clear she leans on her big sister for absolutely everything. Those scaly lizards were closing in. She let out a roar, screaming that Maya could put her life in her hands. She taunted the beasts, daring every single one of them to come at her. She triggered her provocation skill and absolutely wrecked the monster. Seeing she was doing just fine, Leon turned his attention to the real problem, a swarm of berserk lizards that were still charging in without a shred of control. They blitzed through the work, and Lydia gave Maya all the credit for the flawless victory, while Maya was just hyped they'd saved their boss's absolute peak power for the real fight, leaving Leon feeling like they were finally on an unstoppable roll. By the 4th day, Maya had already smashed her way to level 18 and Lydia was showing some solid growth, but Rita was totally stuck. Almost like the tower was making it impossible to level up anymore. The big day for the expedition finally arrived. Leon flashed a grin at his crew and roared that it was time to roll out. They blasted through to the 50th floor, standing just inches away from total victory. He was actually juicing his stats with magic enhancement the whole time. Right now, they're literally busting through the doors of the top floor. He boosted Lydia's raw strength, gave Rita superhuman vision, and beefed up Maya's defense to make her untouchable. He realized the 50th floor was the end of the line, the Royal Tower, where a royal goblin stood tall with the Cobalt King marching right beside him. She flashed a confident smirk, realizing it had been ages since she last clashed with the royal class, while Rita and Lydia both screamed that this was their first time ever. King steps into the spotlight alongside the Lizard King, looming over the battlefield. They square up against the entire group, locking in and bracing for the first strike. These two aren't looking for a long fight. They're here to end this whole thing in the blink of an eye. Everything seemed chill, but the royal class is a total nightmare because they've got the muscle and the brains to lead, yet they still can't relax for a second. Especially since werewolves are straight up lethal when they're hunting alone. She slammed her hammer against her shield and dove headfirst into the chaos, screaming that they were going to weed out the weaklings first, while Lydia charged forward, barking at everyone to get ready. It barely swatted the strike away, making her shriek in disbelief that he'd actually dodged. Leon knew the Cobalt King was the smart tactical play, but the Goblin King was by far the weakest link in the royal lineup. While the dude kept yapping about how they had to hunt down the stealthy Lizard King, Leon finally lost his patience and absolutely fried him with a barrage of thunderclaps. She snuck up and ended the beast with a lethal strike, and just as the second boss lunged at her, Leon stepped in and fried him with a massive bolt of lightning. Lightning streaks toward the beast, but it slams its shield up to tank the hit. Leon screams for everyone to stay calm as he lunges with a massive sword strike, but the monster slips away yet again, only for Maya to catch it off guard and plunge her blade straight into its side. He let out a blood-curdling scream before crashing to the dirt, but Lydia didn't miss a beat, lunging at the next beast to blow its head clean off while Rita held her own against another monster creeping up from behind. She brandished her hammer and screamed for him to grab it. Lydia charged headfirst into the fray, yelling that she'd spotted a gap in its armor. She slammed her weapon home, but the monster barely even felt it. She awkwardly tried to save face, mumbling that it was still a solid hit. He slammed down that hammer, and this time, the monster finally buckled. She joked that the beast was a total nightmare to break. while Maya and Leon just watched the whole scene with huge, relieved grins. Once the dust settled, Lydia burst into laughter, screaming at the top of her lungs that they'd absolutely crushed it, bringing their final day in the dungeon to a legendary end. They stormed straight into the dining hall, slammed down at the table for a round of drinks, and erupted into cheers to celebrate their massive victory. He linked up with them, but the girls dropped a bombshell. There were only 2 of them left, and they'd never even come close to earning a shot at the top floor. Lee just shrugs, admitting he saw this coming from a mile away. Lydia's clearly fuming, but Leon is standing there looking cool as ice. He tells them there's no reason to stress because they're finally on the verge of a massive win. Leon managed to seize the tower with just 2 squads, which is a massive win for the team. Maybe next time we'll finally see all 3 of them jumping into the fray together. Even Leon had to admit that pulling this off was an absolute nightmare. Since the mistress looks totally drained, Rita suggests she join the elite ultimate determination team, and the girl thinks that's a brilliant move. With a confident smirk, she bets big on their potential and urges the princess and Leon to keep moving, while Lydia finally steps up and declares her dream to become a legendary hero. They're all smiles, and honestly, they have every right to be, because the moment their leader finally becomes a legendary hero, they'll be bursting with pride, knowing that for Elle, the rank of commander is just a tiny pit stop on her way to the top. With a bittersweet smile, Rita admitted that the hero actually wasn't such a bad guy after all. She slammed back her drink and crashed the mug onto the table with a massive bang. She then declared that nothing suited her better than the chaotic, explosive flower. It was finally their turn to strike and seize the objective. Maya had a perfect read on exactly where the enemy was heading. Maya shouted back with pure hype, "You bet I do!" She shot up from her seat and declared that they'd rest today, talk strategy tomorrow, and finally storm the tower the day after that. Leon just flashed a smirk and owned the fact that they were the ones taking the hit, while Lydia backed him up with absolute confidence. He shakes Leon's hand and tells him to reach out if they ever get into a bind, while she gives one final thanks for the treats before rushing off. He trailed her until she finally vanished, leaving a stunned Maya to stammer that since he already knew the truth, she was totally speechless. She apologized for the cringy vibe, but Leon quickly played it cool to keep her from spiraling. She was ready to spill the tea on all the rumors, but Lydia cut her off with a sharp smile, telling her to stay locked in on the master plan. He was stunned for a split second, but he quickly flashed a massive grin and told them not to sweat it as the trio stood up, thanked him for the day, and made their exit. Leon finally steps out of the guild. Lydia lets out a heavy sigh, admitting she's completely drained. Leon just flashes her a grin and tells her she needs to hear him out. He looks her in the eye and asks what her next big move is. Leah agreed it was high time they sat down for a real talk, so she asked if they could grab dinner tonight. And while Leon was totally down, he just needed to know the spot. After wondering if he'd recognize it, night falls and the couple meets at a breathtaking spot that Leon realizes is the legendary Soaring Dragon Palace, the most elite hotel in Queen City where even regular folks can actually snag a room. It all clicks when you realize we're in the elite aristocrat district, where everyone is dripping in luxury and dressed to the nines, a massive contrast to the rugged crowd back at the guild. He'd panic bought a suit that looked good enough from some random shop, and now he's stepping inside with his nerves absolutely on edge. He rushes straight to the desk and excitedly blurts out that he's got a reservation, so when the girl asks for his name, he tells her he's Leon. She welcomes Leon with a beaming smile and asks for his ID, so he flashes his guild card and gets the green light to take the elevator straight up to the 10th floor. He rockets up the elevator to the 10th floor, follows the guide's lead, and steps right into a restaurant that looks like a total masterpiece. Leon heads straight for the table where Lydia's waiting, sliding into his seat with a quick apology. But she just flashes a sweet smile and tells him she literally just sat down. He's completely floored the moment he sees her. And man, she looks absolutely breathtaking. Lydia catches him staring and starts giggling at his reaction, leaving our guy to awkwardly stammer out a quick thanks for the invite. She lets out a massive sigh, relieved that they're finally alone so they can dive into the research. And while Leon coolly agrees, she stops him in his tracks, insisting they have a serious heart-to-heart first. He actually pulled it off, but now he's left wondering if this is their new reality. stuck using the sage's time together and forced to hug every single hour, even though neither of them has had the guts to admit how they truly feel. He insisted they absolutely had to hash this out, but Lydia just gave a playful smirk and shook her head, agreeing to talk, but only after they tackled a different topic first. She tells him she's finally ready to reveal her master plan. He's instantly hooked, demanding to know exactly what she's plotting. Lydia fires back that they need a serious sit-down to hash out every single detail of the research. But honestly, could he even wrap his head around her logic, or did she need to spell it out? Leon insisted he was on the same page, but a terrifying thought hit him. If he didn't back Lydia's play, would the entire squad just fall apart? He mentioned he'd brought a haul of snacks from his shop, and while Lydia insisted they save the boring details for later so they could finally dig in, Leon was totally cool with that. She suggests they bet everything on an unstoppable ultimate formation and asks if the Royal Tower is finally under their control, leaving Leon completely blindsided. Leon laughed and tried to clink glasses for a toast, but Lydia shut him down, reminding him they didn't have enough glassware to spare in a dump like this, which left him feeling totally embarrassed. The feast hits the table and Leon starts absolutely inhaling his meal like he's been starving for years, while Lydia keeps it classy, delicately slicing her food into tiny bites as Leon watches her, completely mesmerized. Leon pointed out that their meal was long gone, and only drinks remained. But Lydia admitted the massive crowd was making her feel totally out of place. Carol's practically buzzing with excitement as she suggests they head to a private room to talk, leaving Leon totally blindsided and questioning what kind of hotel this actually is, until Lydia steps in to confirm his suspicions. Thinking she was calling him in, Leon let out a heavy sigh, trying to convince himself they just needed a private spot to talk without anyone eavesdropping. The room was freaking huge. Leon's eyes darted around, taking in the gorgeous high-end furniture. He stood there in total shock, completely blown away. It hit him right then. This was actually his room. We're talking a full-blown luxury hotel suite. His first thought? Just how insane is the price tag per person? She swoops in with a tray and asks if he's down for a drink, catching Leon totally off guard. But he's not about to say no as they clink their glasses together. Lydia knocks back a few drinks and starts feeling a nice buzz. She lets it slip that one of her brothers is actually out there living the life of a high-stakes adventurer. Leon immediately perks up and asks if she's talking about the legendary Mr. Bartow. She's impressed he's done his homework, noting that while her brother is a household name, Leon is surprisingly well-informed. He was the son of Jim Queen, the legendary leader of the Heavenly 7 to 10,000 Fights Party, and let's be real, there isn't a single soul alive who hasn't heard the name Bartholomew. She flashes a proud smile, explaining that even though Bartow's brother was completely cut off by the family, he still managed to crush it as a legendary solo adventurer. Leon double-checked, asking if she was really coming back like he'd heard. Lydia didn't hesitate for a second, confirming it with total confidence. Leon admitted he figured as much, assuming his father was the main reason behind her return. But she cut him off, revealing that his old man was only one piece of the puzzle. Losing a veteran teammate left him absolutely devastated, and with the squad desperate for a replacement, she jumped at the chance the second her father gave her the green light. She flashed a confident smile, bragging that her father was nothing like her brother. He actually knew how to weaponize the Kuvan family's influence. As Leon noted, she was already racing toward the Tower. Flexing their insane wealth, the family decked themselves out in god-tier gear and dropped a fortune to recruit the most elite pros money could buy. She wants to settle the score by asking if he's more of a dad or a brother, and Leon doesn't hesitate for a second. He's definitely the father figure, and Lydia can't help but smirk at his lightning-fast answer. She claimed it was all thanks to her dad finally making it big, but Lydia dropped a massive truth bomb. Just because you're at the top doesn't mean everyone's cheering for you. And honestly, she's spot on. To the world, this is just high society fun, but the girl hangs her head in shame, absolutely sickened by her father's twisted games. Let's be real, the adventurer life is a brutal grind, but playing the hero is even crazier. You pour every last drop of your soul into the fight, never knowing if you'll actually win. And that's exactly what being a hero is all about. He's finally ready to talk. And just like Bartow, he reached this conclusion all on his own, believing that while these guys had the spark of a hero, They've already pushed themselves to their absolute limit. He gripped his hands tight and growled that greatness isn't cheap, and most adventurers just don't have the stamina to keep pushing their limits. He explained how her father went all in, risking everything without caring what the world thought, because he believed that's the true path of an adventurer, and Lydia hung on his every word. She finally lets out a massive sigh of relief as that heavy weight lifts off her soul, absolutely stoked to realize her dad and brother are totally on the same page. He immediately backed off and apologized, saying he had no right to pry into her family's business, but Lydia shut him down, insisting that uncovering the truth was the whole reason they were talking in the first place. Now that the weight of the situation is finally sinking in, he's forced to accept two major conditions. Leaning in close as she reveals the first one, he has to save her family. First off, they're gonna flood the place with reinforcements and burn through a massive mountain of supplies to get the job done. If things get messy down the road, we'll scout the absolute strongest adventurers and elite freelancers money can buy. And Leon just nodded, asking what else they had planned. It's a total tragedy, because if he dares to use her family's insane powers to back her up, there's zero chance he's escaping the spotlight. He grins, spotting the red magician perched right on the princess's neck, knowing exactly what kind of rumors are about to start. And honestly, the thought alone has him absolutely losing it. Lydia beams with hype, shouting that he's definitely got what it takes. He just brushes it off with a smirk, acting like it's a total piece of cake. In reality, he's powerless without her, but he's already given up and accepted his fate. She lets out a piercing scream, yelling at the top of her lungs that she's absolutely not. She boldly declared that Leon was the missing piece to the puzzle and told him he'd better weigh his options carefully. She even called him the only man with a brain left in this world. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. Leon awkwardly stammers that he needs her help to become a sage, but Lydia just shuts him down, insisting that literally anyone else could do the job. He figured it'd be Rida or Maya, but Lydia knew exactly what everyone thought of her and decided it was time to finally show them what she was truly capable of. With a smirk that mirrors her father's, she proves she'll weaponize anything she touches, and Leon realized his hunch about using every dirty trick was dead on. He's weighing his own raw talent against the noble status she's dangling in front of him. But here's the catch. He's got to hand over his sage powers to seal the deal. And that's exactly why this partnership is a total goldmine, he explained, making sure the point finally clicked after an incredible strategy session. Lydia was genuinely touched and made sure he knew how much she appreciated his help, so Leon stood up and announced that their business there was officially finished. She demanded to know exactly where he'd disappeared to. Leon was totally blindsided, stammering as he tried to figure out what she was even talking about. She snapped that since their little chat was over, it was high time for him to head back. But the girl just tilted her head, asking him what he meant by returning. He started feeling like a total dork for rambling when he didn't even get her vibe, but Leon just flashed a grin and told her they were giving each other strength. She knew he was right, and he reminded her that this connection is exactly why fate brought them together at the guild. The girl gasped in total shock that she could actually do it, but her companion shot Leon a look of pure annoyance, asking if he really thought a sage's power was all he needed, leaving Leon to nervously admit he was dead wrong. He roared that he was still dead wrong, and after slamming their glasses onto the table and sitting face to face, they let a heavy silence hang in the air while they just stared each other down for what felt like an eternity. They'd barely finished off the werewolf and made it back home when Ryan realized his father had vanished, a revelation that hit her like a freezing wave of pure dread. She'd already made it clear she was ready to become an adventurer, and honestly, she wasn't even fazed. Lydia looked totally composed now. Looking back, a forgotten memory suddenly hits her. She's met Leon before, the red magician who literally saved her life. He swooped in to save the day right in the middle of the Goblin Lord showdown, fresh off pulling him from a werewolf's jaws. And get this, Leon isn't some legendary sage. He's actually a red magician. See, by that point, he'd already been supercharged by sage skills, evolving way past a basic red mage. Even though Lydia kept trash-talking him for being too weak to even fight back, she bolted. But he didn't dive after her. He just retreated to a safe spot while Leon pointed out that Rita and the crew were still down there. And even though Lydia insisted he kept everyone else out of it, she warned that if they keep talking, Lydia confesses that Leon is the only thing on her mind, sending him into a total blushing frenzy, before she suddenly pivots and asks why he's so convinced he even needs a sage. She flashed a bright smile and told him she was never coming back, but Wei-on shut her down instantly, leaving her to realize he didn't believe a single word she was saying. She grabbed his head and yanked him into a tight embrace, declaring that she only had one wish left in this world, and that wish was Leon. She desperately asked Leon if he could hear her heart, and as he leaned in close, he could literally hear it thumping like a drum against her chest. Carol beams with pride, claiming it's all thanks to her noble blood, and even though she's always clutching her cheeks to stay composed, there's one thing she just can't keep hidden. He claimed he chose the safe zone over the lower floor just to respect her wishes, but let's be real, the guy was hiding a major, hidden agenda. He stared deep into Lydia's eyes and told her straight up that he wanted her, unable to focus on anything else. And even though he had other options, he chose this path, forever haunted by the fact that he was her first, and the one who made her cry. She described it as her first real brush with death, and with her mind spinning in total confusion, she just couldn't stop the tears from falling. But Lydia just stares him down, declaring she only seduced Sage Leon as the Night Princess, insisting her actual heart had absolutely nothing to do with it. It's safe to say that when he appeared mid-battle and called her name, he completely stole her heart before sweeping her off her feet with a kiss. Everything was finally lining up perfectly for him, and as that post-Sage clarity kicked in, she gave him the most bashful look imaginable. He told Lydia he wanted to take things to the next level, and the second she gave him the green light to do whatever he wanted, he knew it was go time. Leon finally hops out of the tub, and the girl beams as she gestures to a table full of food. But as they grab a quick bite, he warns Lydia that she needs to start paying attention to what the girl is saying. He demanded to know exactly why she was so furious. She blinked in total shock, asking him what he was even talking about. He just pointed out that she clearly wasn't in the mood for any of this. Lydia sighed, admitting that her face was basically an open book. She brushed off the failure and claimed she wasn't mad. Well, maybe just a tiny bit. But our guy was absolutely buzzing because he finally felt like he'd cracked the code on her. It would have been way better if she'd just been up front, since he's completely lost right now. But Lydia just flashes a smile and says she wanted to clear things up first. They immediately begged her to cut loose with her magic outside the tower, but Leon reminded them they'd already pulled that off in a safe zone. Lydia drops a major truth bomb. The safe zone and the world outside the tower are two completely different beasts. Leon's caught off guard, asking if that's really how the rules work. She explains that top-tier priests and archmages are so cracked they can actually break the rules and sling magic even in a safe area. That was news to him. Lydia reveals that while they're still cracking the code on using magic outside the tower, there's a ton of classified intel hidden from the public that goes way deeper than just live magic. She explains that wielding both white and black magic outside the tower is humanity's ultimate dream, making it a total disaster if the greedy guilds or stuck-up nobles ever find out what he's actually capable of. He demanded to know what was up, and she awkwardly fessed up, insisting they rethink their support team since it has to be someone he actually trusts. She grilled him, desperate to know if anyone else was in on their little secret. He started sweating bullets, stuttering out that they had a massive problem on their hands. Then she looked him dead in the eye and demanded to know if he'd been wrapping his arms around any other girls. And trust me, his answer right now was absolutely everything. He explains he was just holding on to Rita and Maya, and Lydia finally catches her breath, telling him to stay hidden. But of course, things don't stay quiet for long. He shut her down instantly, keeping his real power hidden from the group. He'd only unleashed his magic with Maya while they were tucked away in the tower, and when she asked if anyone else was there, he just told her he was still sticking with Amelia. She's actually grinding away as a masseuse in a local salon. Lydia is totally stunned, questioning if she's really just a masseuse. He reveals the truth. She was his ride-or-die partner back when he first ascended to the legendary Sage class. Thinking she might be his secret lover, Leon stammers out her words in a panic, realizing the guildmaster baited him into a massage parlor that's definitely hiding something shady. Leon admitted he'd used magic, but he kept his insane sage powers a total secret. She was completely blown away that anyone could cast spells outside the tower, and Lydia totally backed him up. The guildmaster swore her lips were sealed, so Lydia warned him that he'd better keep his mouth shut too. Leon gave her a firm nod, totally on board with the secrecy, but then he turned the tables, asking her why she gets so salty every time he goes out of his way to help someone else. She was totally lost, wondering if this wasn't just standard guy behavior, especially since her own dad had a revolving door of women behind her mom's back, so Leon finally pressed her to explain what her deal was. He actually took the time to give her a full deep clean before they even hit the hay. Leon just shrugged it off, saying he didn't want her waking up feeling like a total mess. And honestly, Lydia was beyond touched that he went out of his way for her. To her, it felt like she was being tossed aside like a piece of broken trash. It was as if he'd just looked her in the eye and called her absolute filth. But Leon just smirked, telling her that every word she spat out was actually music to his ears. Leon declared that once they seized the tower, they'd definitely need a hug. And as a flustered Lydia shyly agreed, he reminded her that anything can go down in the heat of a mission. He shoots her a smirk, explaining that this is exactly why he stays ahead of the mess, leaving a bashful Lydia to just nod along as she grabs her mug and takes a long sip of tea. He leaned over the table and demanded to know when the expedition was finally happening, but Leon just stammered back that he didn't have a solid plan yet. She immediately demands to know what's wrong, but Leon stands firm, insisting the exploration starts tomorrow regardless, and that's when Lydia steps up, asking if he's down for a hug. Morning finally arrived. Our guy blinked his eyes open and peered out the window. It hit him. They'd actually gone at it until the break of dawn. He was totally drained, with 0 gas left in the tank for scouting today. Beside him, Lydia finally started to stir. He flashed a bright smile and chirped a cheerful, "Good morning!" Suddenly, Lydia let out a startled cry of pure shock. She was practically vibrating with hype, asking him if he'd actually managed to pull off the cleansing. Grinning like a madman, Leon declares his time as a sage is dead. He's a red magician now, and he's gonna give it his all to cleanse her body. Lydia just shrugs and says she's cool with it, but Leon catches a look on her face and asks what that was all about. She beamed at him and handed over her robe, curious about his next move, but Leon just played it cool, explaining that a simple purification spell was the way to go. She flashed a teasing grin in her bathrobe and headed for the shower, while Leon played it cool, thinking it was way too early for things to get that spicy. He suggests they hit the streets to explore tomorrow, and she's totally down, promising they'll head out the moment they check out of the hotel, leaving Leon to step outside and clear his head. Leon hit the streets for a quick stroll to clear his head. He started second-guessing his gear, wondering if he was actually prepared for the chaos waiting for him tomorrow. After a massive shopping marathon that lasted all evening, he finally hauled himself back to the guild late that night. And just like that, the sun rose on the big day. The mission was finally on. The second our guy catches up with Leon, he's already tripping over himself to apologize for being late, but she just flashes a huge grin and insists she's the one who showed up way ahead of schedule. She shoved it straight into her assistant's bag and told him to keep it safe, catching him totally off guard. But he didn't dare refuse her. Lydia reveals the mystery item is actually a high-tier magic tent, packed with a massive interior, ironclad defenses, and total soundproofing, giving them the ultimate safe zone to dive into the unknown without a single worry. He warned her not to push her luck, and Lydia promised she'd play it safe. Then he turned to Leon, entrusting him with the lady's safety, and Leon just flashed a massive grin, shouting that he was all over it. Leon hits the guild and immediately starts scanning the crowd for Miriam, but she's nowhere to be found. Lydia catches his worried expression and asks if something's up, but he just plays it cool and tells her everything's fine. They were locked in on 2 major goals. First, skyrocket their rank by slaying monsters and returning loot. And second, secure the rights to the 50th floor as fast as humanly possible. He's practically fighting to prove that someone else is way more important to him. They finally pull up to the massive dungeon gates. Leon stops her, demanding to know what their real business is here. Lydia just flashes a confident smirk and tells him, "You guessed it." As they push for the 41st floor, Leon realizes this campaign is all about forging an unbreakable will. A tall order since Lydia is a level 45 powerhouse while he's still just level 4. He was just about to explain how to level up his sage skills when Lydia suddenly cut him off and demanded he listen up. She looked at him in total disbelief, asking if they were really going to pull this off right here, but Leon promised that the 41st floor was a total blind spot for prying eyes, breaking down every detail to prove they were 100% safe. Lydia's buzzing with excitement, dying to know what he's got planned for the tent, while Leon just grins, telling her that even if someone caught the tent shaking from the outside, they wouldn't have the slightest clue what was actually going down. She mumbled sheepishly, but Leon knew she'd have to toughen up fast. Unlike Lydia's gradual progression, he'd already jacked his own difficulty up to the absolute max from the very beginning. He's practically begging for her forgiveness, but honestly, his guilt is just weighing her down. Lydia shouts back with total confidence that he has absolutely nothing to be sorry for. She's been ready for this since the very beginning. She grabs his hand and tells him that, besides, she sheepishly admits she didn't actually say no, leaving Leon completely floored, but he immediately pulls Dee into a massive hug and shouts that Lydia is a total legend while she just beams back at him. She told him to hold her close, reminding him that this was the only way he'd finally become a sage. He had to finish what he started, and Leon was ready to see it through. Right after that monster hug, Lydia flashed a wicked smile and slammed her weapon home, while Leon stayed busy fending off a whole swarm of smaller creeps. After muscling his way onto the 43rd floor, he flashed a confident grin and told her they were finally alone and could take a breather, but Lydia just brushed it off and insisted she was good to go. Sage's time in the heat of battle is finally over. They retreat to a safe haven and scramble to set up a massive tent. This thing was an absolute unit, practically a portable fortress. They finally finished the job, slumping down with a heavy sigh of pure exhaustion. He fired up the sage's ability once more, and as they stormed out, Leon realized they'd absolutely blitzed through 49 floors in just half a day, fighting like madmen until the sage's power finally ran dry. To say his whole world flipped upside down is an understatement. His level absolutely skyrocketed, and he walked away with total magic mastery, plus a lethal collection of water, earth, and wind blades. This was the sage's absolute regime. Lydia shouted out in total excitement when she saw him freeze in his tracks. She rushed over, dying to know what he had just found. Leon just grinned and told her he'd officially leveled up. Leon let out a victory cry, shouting that he'd finally mastered the blade spell system. And honestly, even he couldn't believe he'd actually pulled it off. The world is built on 7 core elements: earth, water, fire, darkness, and spiritual power, which fuse together to create insane high-tier abilities. But the order you unlock them depends entirely on what you already own. Since Leon's already rocking thunder, she warns that his next element can be anything as long as it isn't fire. He shuts that down instantly, revealing he's actually infused his blade spell with every single element, leaving the girl screaming in total shock at his insane mastery. But that first skill he mastered in Sage mode? It might actually be a total disaster. Maya's literally screaming because she can't believe her eyes, but Leon just plays it cool and drops a thanks. But get this, magic wasn't the only thing he brought back. He actually snagged a brand new skill that keeps his Sage mode running way longer than ever before. Turning bright red, she sheepishly insisted they go check it out right now. Then, she nervously blurted out a request for a hug right then and there. And Leon didn't miss a beat, telling her he was totally down for it. Lydia charges straight into the heart of the beastly horde. He dual wields a blazing fire blade and a surging water blade to bring the elemental heat. Before the monsters can even react, he absolutely shreds through them in record time. Bradley's convinced that a new attribute is a massive power boost, but Lydia knows the real secret. Leon is just ruthlessly picking apart their weak spots, leaving everyone wondering if he could actually unleash every single element in one non-stop barrage. He's actually packing a multiple aria, and by cranking up its level, he's slashing his mana cooldown to 0. But here's the kicker. His Sage mode just hit its absolute limit. He declared that the Sage's reign was officially dead and buried. Lydia chimed in, pointing out that 2 whole hours had already ticked away since they flipped the switch. Leon realized the clock had actually jumped forward by 2 extra hours. Instead of stopping, he pushes them to dive even deeper into the research. Man, this guy seriously loses himself in the zone sometimes. She plopped down right next to him, insisting they go for round 2, and after a bashful nod from Leon, they shared a deep hug that finally triggered the Sage Mode transformation. A pack of absolute monsters suddenly blocked their path. Leon hollered that he was leaving the small fry to her. She screamed back with total confidence, promising to handle every last one of them. And trust me, she was about to make quick work of them. He's so determined he might actually go for it, because if he can just nail the Orc Lord's weak spot with an air blade, 2 hits are all it takes to drop that monster for good. This time, he decided to double down with a dual-element combo, roaring at the top of his lungs as he summoned both a fire blade and a wind blade. He closed the gap instantly, and before the beast could even blink, he landed a devastating blow that reduced it to a pile of ash in seconds. It was absolutely unreal. He was suddenly wielding a blade of pure, flickering fire, and while Lydia was losing her mind and calling him a total freak, Leon just casually dropped the bombshell that he'd finally mastered magic. They wondered if he'd finally hit a new level, but Leon confidently yelled back that he'd mastered magic without gaining a single point of XP. She's absolutely floored that he actually pulled it off, especially since she'd only heard rumors that such a crazy feat was even possible. Leon just shrugs it off like it's no big deal, claiming he was just testing the waters, while the other guy finally locks in and ignites his blade into a roaring inferno. It worked. Lydia was absolutely losing her mind, shouting about how epic it was and calling him a total legend. Then, she asked what kind of crazy power he could unleash with the Earth attribute, and Leon just smirked, saying he'd give it a shot. Suddenly, the water and wind blades slammed together, fusing into one lethal strike that rocketed deep into the corridor. Leon flashed a hesitant grin as everyone assumed he'd mastered a new trick, but he quickly set the record straight, admitting that while it looked like a storm blade, he hadn't actually learned the spell yet. Leon's totally pumped, asking if they really have to keep brawling to master this, while Lydia's already screaming for them to floor it and find some enemies to wreck. He shreds the beast with a lethal fusion of water and wind, proving he's finally mastered the legendary Blade of the Storm. He immediately charges the next foe, tearing them down with a brutal water and earth strike that shows his mastery over the water blade is on a whole different level. Leon realized he needed way more combat experience to master his power, but then a wild thought hit him. What if he fused them? Right then and there, he unleashed both the storm blade and the water blade at the exact same time. He moves like a blur, absolutely shredding the monster in seconds, while Leon watches intensely to make sure he's still standing, because there's no denying it, he's finally mastered the Thunder Blade. He's absolutely floored because he just realized he can master magic without ever touching his level. A broken cheat code reserved strictly for the Sage. And the crazy part? This class's potential is literally off the charts. He finally gets it. You can't just manifest magic that doesn't even exist. But Leon just shrugs, telling them he's been grinding like crazy to do exactly that. It definitely feels that way whenever he's slinging his offensive spells around. But now, he's got one more wild experiment he's dying to pull off. A pack of monsters suddenly zeroed in on the couple. Leon roared that he was taking the lead, trusting her to handle whatever was left. She gave a sharp nod, letting him know she was on it. He realized that up until this moment, he'd been layering his spells one on top of the other. We're talking 3 different one-part attributes working in perfect sync. Since thunder harnesses earth, water, and wind, and his flames fuse fire with wind, he dual-wielded the thunder and flame blades to unleash absolute chaos. Leon's mind raced, wondering just how much power he'd unleash if he fused all 4 elements together. He stared down at his blades, his heart sinking as he realized he'd completely blown it. But the second his magic slammed into those monsters, the entire battlefield vanished in a deafening explosion. He scanned the battlefield for any sign of the monsters, but when he found nothing but dust, he realized his plan actually worked. He's finally mastered his brand new magic, the devastating explosive blade. After looting the beast, they started questioning the Sage's bizarre class. But Leon admitted she was totally in the dark about explosion magic, and the girl was just as clueless. She claimed that alchemists basically just craft bombs they aren't allowed to touch, and while miners might blast rocks in the pits, she'd never even heard of someone unleashing elemental attributes inside a tower. This stays strictly off the books for now, And as Lydia smirks about their ever-growing mountain of secrets, he doubles down, swearing he's ready to try every wild option they've got. The girl suddenly stumbles upon a fresh pack of monsters. Leon falls back on his training, having already mastered the deadly explosive arrow. He tears through the first beast and mops up the rest in the blink of an eye. And just like that, he's officially mastered the power of the explosive bullet. Even with skills like arrow and bullet, thunder and flame alone shouldn't trigger an explosion like that. And while Lydia admitted the attack was absolutely devastating, she had to wonder, how much mana does a move that insane actually burn through? He's only got 3 explosive arrows and 2 bullets to work with, while that blade is a total one-hit wonder. And if he taps into Red Mage mode, he's down to just 1 single arrow. If that's the case, you've seriously got to see this. Leon realized this was their secret to non-stop power leveling. Once the raid wrapped up, Lydia skyrocketed to level 48 while Leon hit level 6. To top it all off, he just unlocked a nasty new debuff, the body-weakening curse. They head back to the guild, but the receptionist delivers a crushing blow. The upper floors are strictly off-limits. Lydia absolutely loses it, screaming that there's no way this is happening all over again, while Leon just sighs, realizing they're stuck in the exact same loop. Even if he cranks up that Sage class, he's still stuck as a measly level 20 Red Mage. Any normal class would have cruised to level 50 with that much effort, but because Lydia's rocking a rare special class, they barely managed to scrape her up to level 48. At this rate, they're going to hit the tower's peak in no time, and Leon promises that if he evolves his class, he'll power level Lydia straight to 50, though she's still terrified of being left in his dust. Leon just gives them a confident smirk, promising that everything is going to be perfectly fine. You can tell he's already cooking up a secret plan in the back of his mind, but before they do anything, he tells everyone to kick back and get some much-needed rest. It's already been 2 full days since the group last got together. Suddenly, Leon stops dead in his tracks, sensing that the guy is lurking somewhere nearby. Realizing he's finally at the Lily Garden, Leon marches to the gate to get some answers, but when the guards tell him to beat it, he fires back that he's not going anywhere until his business is done. 2 cold steel blades were suddenly leveled right at his throat. The girl shrieked that there was absolutely no room for a piece of trash like him in this place. Her friend joined the chorus, barking at him to get the hell out before things got messy. Leon stood there frozen, his mind spinning as he tried to process what the hell was even going on. This was the Lily Garden's inner sanctum, a place where dirty men were strictly forbidden, leaving a flustered Leon to awkwardly double-check if they were actually serious about the no boys allowed rule. He roared that it was strictly forbidden as they jabbed the guy with spears again, but Leon just hyped himself up, shouting that he only wanted to call Rita. She absolutely lost it, screaming that he was a cocky brat for using the boss's first name and ordering him to stay still so she could slice him down, while Leon shrieked in pure terror, begging her to stop. Twitching her cat ears, she shrieks at him to turn tail and run, threatening to jam something nasty into his spear if he doesn't, leaving him absolutely floored. Leon tells them to knock it off, confident that just hearing his name is enough for her to get the hint. And while she calls him a total scoundrel, she's secretly hyped and begging to know exactly what he said. Carol, the girl with the animal ears, leaned in to ask what they were whispering about, and after the guy gave a clumsy, nervous nod, she turned to Leon to see if he was really an adventurer, which he confirmed with total swagger. She turned to Tensley, questioning if he was actually a powerful red magician too. He gave a super awkward nod, basically admitting he was the real deal. The girls immediately hit the dirt, begging for mercy and screaming at the top of their lungs for his forgiveness. She shrieked that the red mage Leon was actually the savior, leveling her blade at him while sobbing that she deserved the most brutal death imaginable for her mistake. Years grabbed them and let out a piercing scream, losing her mind over the cruel words she'd spat at Mr. Leon. And feeling so low, she actually wanted to stab him. They wouldn't even flinch if he struck them in broad daylight, giving him total reign to do whatever he wanted, leaving a shell-shocked Leon wondering why this was actually turning them on. Surrounded by her squad, annoyed as hell, she demanded to know who was making all that racket in the middle of the day. Leon whipped his head around and cheered at the top of his lungs that Rita was finally there. She just beamed, realizing that Leon had actually shown up, Leon stares down the girls guarding the entrance and demands to know what the heck is going on, but they just keep hysterically shouting that he can do whatever he wants with them. While wandering the city streets, he decides to duck into a cozy little coffee shop. He swings the door open and steps inside, leaving the noise of the world behind. Right away, a super-friendly waitress greets him with a warm smile and a big welcome. Leon mentions he's got an appointment, and with a bright smile, the girl ushers him inside. He orders a coffee, and as soon as she brings it over, he takes a slow, calculated sip. She apologized for keeping him waiting, but looking totally baffled, she told him that no matter how much she wanted to, she just couldn't let him step foot inside the lily garden. He flashed her a reassuring grin to let her know everything was fine, but his mind kept drifting back to how those girls had bombarded him with questions about Rita. Honestly, trying to have a normal conversation in that chaos was a total nightmare. He comments on how incredibly chill the vibe is in the shop. Right on cue, the waitress swings by to see what Rita's having. Rita just gives her a nod and tells her she'll take the usual. She lets out a long sigh and demands to know what's really on his mind. Leon drops the act and finally admits he's there to ask for her help. She suddenly shouts that she's down to help, leaving Leon absolutely stunned as he frantically asks if she's for real, but she isn't even listening to the details. There was absolutely no way she could turn Leon down now. Leon got all hyped up, admitting that what he was asking for was basically a suicide mission. But Rita just smirked, telling him he wouldn't have asked if he didn't already know she could pull it off. Rita is super intrigued by the research, and when she offers to tag along with him and Lydia, our guy literally shouts his head off in excitement. He made it crystal clear that he wasn't playing games. Leon roared his answer at the top of his lungs. He locked eyes with her, his gaze burning with pure confidence. There wasn't a single shred of doubt left in his soul. They're rolling with the three-man crew, leaving them one person short, just as the waitress swings by to drop off Rita's order. As Leon knocks back his drink, she drops a bombshell. If any of these guys hold a high-ranking position, their combat power is going to tank by at least 25%. Leon reveals the princess has hit level 48, and the girl is seriously impressed, noting that their synergy is so cracked they can take down bosses all by themselves. He flashed a grin, certain that as long as she was with them, they could handle anything. She was caught totally off guard, amazed that he'd placed so much faith in her. But honestly, she was absolutely glowing, and he just smiled back, letting her know he felt exactly the same way. She didn't even wait to hear the plan before jumping in, proving she's ride or die, but then she turned beet red and started screaming for even more. Rita's shocked that the princess is already level 48 without a class change, but Leon reveals he's holding out for that massive power spike at level 50. With a grin, they officially committed to the hero life, and Leon was dying to know what floor she'd reached before her big change, only for her to casually drop that she'd hit the 40th, give or take. Level 40. Let's go. Rita starts worrying that she totally messed up the difficulty for this run, but he just barks back that he's doing fine, while she laughs and tells him they've got everything under control. Rita only said that because she had to step up and start acting like a true leader. At first, her plan was to pull the trigger on her class change the second she hit level 35. But back then, the current leader and the elders stepped in with some crucial advice. Taking their word for it, she decided to hold off on that shift until she reached level 50. Then, out of nowhere, the old leader got mangled on a mission and was forced into retirement. She just couldn't hack it in her new role, so the elders made a final call. She needs the former leader's personal blessing to stay in the game. Suddenly, she's thrust into the leader's seat, but Rita claps back that she was promised she'd only ever have to stay in the middle of the pack. She threw the rulebook out the window and started calling her own shots. She constantly got chewed out for swapping her class behind everyone's back. Maya's warning came rushing back to him. This girl didn't look anything like a real adventurer. The guy cracks a joke with a grin, sending her into fits of laughter while Leon watches them with a smile, casually sipping his coffee, right until Rita lets out a scream that shakes the whole room. She flashed a grin, announcing they'd start their lessons in 2 days, and a stunned Leon quickly agreed, promising to have everything ready by tomorrow as they finally called it a wrap. Rita gives Leon a final wave before heading off toward home. Leon just stands there, his eyes glued to her as she disappears. He can still hear Maya's frantic screams echoing in his head, begging to take her sister with her. Our guy lets out a long, heavy sigh, looking absolutely drained by the whole situation. Staring at the looming tower, he knew their time in this city was almost up, so he hit the streets and raided the local shops to gear up for the mission ahead. Back at the guild, the clerk hands over a letter with a smile, revealing that Lydia is officially teaming up with Rita, leaving our guy smirking because honestly, it was just that easy. Leon's eyes dart around the hall, but he comes up empty, and after an awkward brush-off with the guild staff, he beats a hasty retreat, bummed that Milliam is a total no-show today. With the prep work finally finished, Liang's convinced they've got the green light to storm the peak, starting with a total scorched earth sweep of the 41st floor as their leader roars for them to move out. Our level 6 sage is heading out on a mission, backed by the powerhouse level 48 Knight Princess Lydia and the tanky level 25 Rita. She charges head-on into the monster horde with a wild, joyful shout, slamming her shield into them with such bone-crushing power that the entire pack is left absolutely wrecked by the devastating impact. She lunged straight into the next pack of bloodthirsty beasts. Her razor-sharp blade flashed, carving through the enemy ranks like butter. Leon stepped up to a massive boss and completely wrecked him without even breaking a sweat. He couldn't help but grin when he saw the mithril sword Lydia forged, and after she asked if it was to his liking, he told her he'd be absolutely unstoppable, prompting her to scream that they were about to go on a total rampage. She was grinning like a maniac while pulverizing monsters with her hammer, looking like she was having the time of her life. Lydia's strikes were a graceful dance of destruction, while Leon just blitzed through the rest in a total blur. The entire floor was absolutely crawling with vicious monsters. Leon realized that carving through this horde was their only ticket to the 45th floor. Finally, the first grueling day of their expedition came to a close. They managed to track down a safe zone tucked away on the 45th floor. They wasted no time pitching their tent and diving into a much-needed meal. She flashed a massive grin, realizing Leon's buffs are the real deal, looking so energized you'd never guess she'd been brawling on the front lines all day. The sage's regime is giving her an absolute power surge, and while Rita admits the effect is massive, she reminds them that her support magic is the real game changer, and Leon is right there with her. She finally spoke up, letting her know she was totally on the same page. Leon's support magic is honestly just cracked at this point. Rita screamed at the top of her lungs, "That's exactly what I'm talking about!" It turns out the princess gets her better than anyone could have imagined. The guy lays out the plan. They're getting 9 hours of rest total, but they'll be rotating 3-hour guard shifts outside the tent to keep watch. To settle the leaderboard, they had to pick the top 2 spots, and Rita immediately screams that second place belongs to her since she's the highest-ranked one in the group. She suggests that Leon should be the one to take the first shift. He's totally down for it, but he's gotta ask, what's the catch? Blushing hard, she confesses she just wants to get way closer to Lydia. This leaves the girl completely caught off guard. She's practically shouting that it's a genius plan, and Leon just gives a chill smile, saying he's all in. The guy tells them to get some rest, and she agrees. It's finally time to crash. Leon hunkered down in his sleeping bag right outside the tent, and just as he started drifting off, Rita stepped out to give him a groggy, heartfelt thank you. Rita shouts that it's finally her turn, and while Leon eagerly offers her a sleeping bag, she tells him to back off. So he relents as she dives into her bed with a massive grin. Leon sheepishly admitted he'd just been sitting there to explain why it was still warm, while the guy cracked open door number 10 to grab the case, but she just told him to kick back and keep resting. He makes his way back to the tent. Inside, he finds Lydia completely knocked out, clearly having been asleep for ages. He reaches down and carefully peels back the blanket. Her eyes snap open as she asks if it's finally time for her shift. He starts apologizing immediately, feeling guilty for waking her up, but she just brushes it off, telling him it's totally fine. She shut him down, insisting she needed her rest, but when Leon asked if this wasn't the better way to sleep, she challenged him to either hop in or admit he was just scared to be near her, which he immediately shot down. Leon flashes a warm smile, teasing her for being so worried, before she tucks them in tight and tells him to get some rest while Rita passes out right outside the tent. Talk about a massive power trip. Rita let out a huge, lazy yawn the second she opened her eyes. Lydia tried to ninja her way out of bed to avoid waking him, but she was totally pinned down. Leon's eyes snapped open right then, and he immediately asked her what the deal was. She flashed him a guilty grin, silently begging for forgiveness. She gently nudged him back to the land of the living. Leon groggily asked if it was finally time for his shift. Instead of answering, she leaned over and planted a soft kiss on his lips. She whispered that she had to take off immediately. Leon just gave her a nod, telling her it was no big deal. Lydia stood up with a nervous grin. But then she got dead serious and promised that no matter how bad things got, she'd always have his back. She urged him to finally follow his heart, and while Leon was left totally blindsided by her sudden change of pace, she just gave a playful giggle, said she was heading out, and stepped right through the tent flaps. Our hero racked his brain, desperately trying to decode what those words actually meant. Right then, Rita pushed past the flap and stepped into the tent. She flashed a bright smile, relieved to see he was finally wide awake. Leon confirmed he was up and, without missing a beat, asked what kind of tea he should brew for her. Rita beamed at him, thanking him for the sweet gesture. They sat down to steaming mugs of tea and a massive stack of sandwiches. Rita beamed, declaring that the extra honey made this the greatest tea of all time. She tore into a sandwich and licked her fingers clean, totally lost in the flavor. To her, this wasn't just a snack. It was pure, delicious heaven. Leon watched her every move, his gaze completely locked on her. He grit his teeth, realizing there was no way he could go through with it. He flashed a grin and suggested they finally hit the hay. Rita was totally down, giving him the green light that she was ready. So, the two of them finally climbed under the covers together. But Leon was so hyped up that his mind was racing. There was no way he was catching any Z's tonight. To make matters worse, Rita is living rent-free in his head, and even though he tried to blow off steam with Lydia, it didn't do a damn thing to help him forget. She whispers a request to scoot closer, making Leon spin around in total shock. But when she teases him about it being forbidden, he stammers that it's totally fine while she just giggles at his reaction. He's totally lost and asks her what she's even talking about. She explains that this tent is 100% soundproof. Not a single noise gets out. He just gives a nervous nod, feeling the tension start to rise. Suddenly she goes for it and asks if he wants to cuddle up. But Leon gets all flustered and sheepishly tells her he's not interested. Pressing right up against his back, she whispered that the princess was already on board, and if Leon just gave the green light, they were golden. At least, that's how he interpreted Lydia's suggestive offer. As those words hung in the air, Leon felt his heart hammering in sync with Rita's, sensing the raw intensity behind her massive proposal, and as he locked eyes with her, she told him straight up that he didn't have to go through with it if he wasn't ready. He gripped it tight, knowing the stage was finally set for the sage's new era. Since Rita always knocks out cold after a few drinks, he knew exactly how to make his move. Lydia swore she'd stand by him no matter what, and with her loyalty locked in, he's confident they can survive even if Rita uncovers the truth about the sage's regime. She gushed that she wasn't trying to claim him all for herself, and as he nodded in understanding, she confessed that he's the only person on her mind right now. Lydia greeted him with a bright smile, asking if he'd rested up, and a hyped-up Leon shouted back that he'd never felt better. She raved about how incredible it felt, just as Rita stepped out to join the group and started her warm-up, while another girl shouted with a massive grin that she felt totally revitalized and didn't even know why. He pressed for answers about the sage, but Leon just shook his head, secretly thrilled that his new body weakness skill was perfectly masking his insane power spike. She's hyped, clutching that teapot like a prize. Rita plops right down, her eyes locked onto the feast, and lets out a huge cheer about how amazing it tastes. The whole crew dives in with her as they all roar out a massive bon appétit. The chaos exploded, starting on the 46th floor as a horde of monsters charged right at them, but Lydia instantly shredded the beasts with her blade while Leon unleashed his magic, and Rita started crushing skulls with her massive hammer. They were tearing through enemies at lightning speed, and Leon was feeling unstoppable as they finished clearing out every last monster on the floor by the end of the second day. They figured they'd hit the 47th floor safe zone, but they weren't alone. They burst through the doors only to find 3 guys screaming that Lady Lydia had finally arrived. She pegged them as defense troops, while Rita and Leon stood frozen behind her, completely baffled by what was happening and how Lydia even knew these guys. When they pressed him about the defense force, Leon caught on instantly, flashing a smirk as he confirmed it was Lydia's brother, and yeah, they report straight to him, no big deal. Lydia's eyes lit up as she practically shouted, asking what on earth they were doing there. The guys played it cool, explaining they were just out on a standard patrol. Apparently, the local monster population has been exploding lately, and someone's got to handle it. She beamed at them, genuinely thanking the guys for all the hard work they do. But here's the kicker. It turns out her brother wasn't the one who gave them the order, confirming she was actually crashing there for the night. Lydia shot back a quick nod, confirming the plan. The guys immediately roared that they'd be taking the night watch, telling her she could finally rest easy without a single worry. She was totally stunned, asking if they were actually serious about going that far. She shouted at the top of her lungs that she was totally fine, insisting they get some rest too, but he just laughed it off and told her that pulling an all-nighter is a total breeze when it's for her. Backed into a corner and totally speechless, Lydia shoots a panicked look at Leon for help, but he just tells her they've got no choice but to take the deal. She glared at him with pure disgust. That was definitely not the answer she was looking for. Lydia finally snapped and hollered at them to just have a good night. Leon could only stammer out a super awkward good night in response. The other guys are shooting him some major death stares. He realizes right then that there's zero chance they're sharing a tent tonight. So Leon ends up roughing it in his sleeping bag right outside. By day 3, Lydia and Rita are absolutely howling, and Liam watches with a manic grin, realizing these two are way more bloodthirsty than usual. Once they hit the 49th floor safe zone, Lydia, Rita, and Leon laid out a spread, but they just sat there in a daze, sipping tea and looking completely baffled by the madness they'd just survived. The air was thick with tension as it became clear the spot was already claimed, and while Rita glared daggers at the guy, Leon just stared down at his mug and took a painfully awkward sip. Leah and Leon are locked in a tight, cozy embrace. They're finally sharing the same bed together. Leon looks over at Rita and asks if she's ready to take things to the next level with both of them. That question hits her like a truck, sending a massive blush straight to her face. She flashed a wide grin and insisted that she stay with them, leaving Rita absolutely buzzing with gratitude for both her and Leon. She stared up at the ceiling and admitted she was powerless, leaving Leon to accept the grim reality that tomorrow would be their final stand. And just like that, the sun rose on their last day. He was charging toward the top floor with Lydia, and since she's leveled up like crazy and their bond is tighter than ever, even the boss was a total pushover for them. Back at the guild, Leon's left wondering what's coming next until a staffer drops a massive bombshell. He and Lydia have officially unlocked the path to the top floor. Rita flashed a grin, asking if this was finally the moment he'd been waiting for. Leon gave a firm nod, telling her that, yeah, it was, and thanked her for everything. She beamed back at him, letting him know that she was the one who was truly grateful. She beamed, insisting that seeing them happy was thanks enough since she was having a total blast. And after wishing Leon and the princess the best of luck, she reached out to seal the moment with a heartfelt handshake. Everything was going great, and they kept the party rocking until the break of dawn. But as the sun rose, Leon realized Lydia had to finally claim her hero title and get as far away from this city as possible. After all, those were the ruthless demands her own brother forced her to follow. Claiming total victory over the royal tower, Leon collapsed onto his bed, declaring they'd finally made it. Now he just needs to recharge before the ultimate battle tomorrow. A sudden knock startles Leon awake, and as he bolts out of bed, shouting that he's coming, he wonders who could possibly be there, only to swing the door open and find a very familiar dark-haired girl staring back at him. She flashes a casual smile, but Leon is completely blindsided, shouting her name, Amelia! He never expected to see her face again, and he's left wondering, what the heck is she even doing here? Leon flashes a grin and shouts her name, finally realizing it's Amelia. To be fair, he didn't recognize her at first, because the last time they met she was literally swimming in lava. Seeing her in casual clothes is a total breath of fresh air, but when he asks what she's up to, she mentions that Gil sent her. which completely throws him for a loop since he never realized the guildmaster's real name was Gilbert. Leon flashed a smirk and waved her right through. Amelia chirped her thanks, her face lighting up. She was practically buzzing as she asked what he was getting into today. But our boy just shrugged, admitting his schedule was a total blank slate. Emily looked up with hope in her eyes, practically begging him for a shopping date. They arrived in the heart of the city and immediately started pounding the pavement. They wove through a massive sea of people as the streets buzzed with life. She grabbed him by the hand and dragged him off on a shopping spree, eventually ducking into a china shop where she started geeking out over a plate while Leon hung on to her every word. Believe it or not, this was actually the first time he'd ever hit the shops with a girl like her. He stole a quick glance at her, his brain working overtime to find the perfect way to ask his question. Leon watched her cycle through hats like a fashion show, his face turning beet red as he realized this totally felt like a real date, and he was spot on. Even though they'd been strictly business for ages, he was still absolutely buzzing with excitement. We cut to Lee's apartment, where the real talk is about to begin. The girl welcomes him in with a massive, friendly smile. She's ready to spill the beans immediately, but tells him he should probably take a seat first. Lee just shrugs it off, though, telling her he's perfectly fine standing. He scans the room, his brain short-circuiting as he realizes he's actually in Emily's place, where everything feels eerily cozy while she's busy whipping up a meal right behind his back. She set the steaming bowl right in front of him, begging for a taste test, and while Leon politely thanked her and took a bite, he instantly froze the second it hit his tongue. He starts inhaling the soup like his life depends on it. He bellows at the top of his lungs that it's freaking delicious. Emily tells him she went totally overboard with the cooking, so he better not hold back. He roars that he's definitely going in for seconds then. She chirps back that it's coming right up. He cleared his plate and roared that it was a total feast, patting his stomach in pure satisfaction because he was absolutely head over heels for Emily's cooking. She took it in her hands and flashed a grateful smile, thanking him for the help. Leon offered to jump in and lend a hand, but Emily immediately waved him off. She told him not to worry about a thing, insisting that he relax since he was their guest. Then, she asked if he'd be down for a fresh cup of coffee. Leon gave her a nod, confirming he was totally in for that. Leon teased her that the food tasted like a 5-star chef made it. But when Emily claimed she could actually make a career out of it, he was left completely floored. She approaches him with a tray, flashing a grin as she drops the bombshell that she's quit her job, and Leon starts screaming in a total panic because she knows exactly why he's losing his mind. She sits down and finally drops the truth. She's been soul-searching for ages, and with 30 right around the corner, she's decided it's finally time, leaving Leon completely floored as he realizes just how much older she actually is. Watching her every move, Emily reveals her obsession with the kitchen. And since I'm a veteran of the coffee shop grind myself, it's clear her heart is set on finally becoming a top-tier restaurant hostess. She explained how her entire life had flipped since taking that job, and as those old memories started rushing back, she mentioned the stash of cash she'd managed to save, which Leon totally understood. After all the shortcuts, it finally clicked that her dream was actually within reach, and she looked absolutely radiant as she shared the news with total peace. While her peers are barely scraping by, rumors are flying that she cheated her way to the top. But Leon's only got one question. When is her big city restaurant finally opening? She shook her head with a heavy sigh, admitting that opening a shop here is a total no-go because people would definitely mistake it for a special kind of business, if you catch my drift. Leon springs up, yelling that it's all a lie, but the reality hits him hard as he sinks back down in total defeat. Emily opens up about her dream to disappear to a brand new city and start over by opening a cozy little cafe of her own. Winning over customers is going to be an uphill battle, but she's determined to grind it out until she finally finds success. She locked eyes with him, realizing her cooking could actually bring people joy, and beamed as she asked if that wasn't the most amazing thing ever. As she lay there, it hit him that Amelia was finally leaving to chase her destiny. And though he desperately wanted to cheer her on, he was completely paralyzed until she looked up and asked him what was wrong. He wonders why she stayed behind, but makes her a promise. If they crush the tower in their next raid, They're ditching this city for good, so if she still hasn't found a place to call home, she's more than welcome to join the squad. She lets out a nervous laugh, teasing him for saying such heavy stuff when he's just a kid. He tries to apologize, but she holds up a hand, needing a moment to catch her breath. But then, the laughter fades, and she starts crying her eyes out. Leon and Emily were chilling at the table, catching their breath over some tea. Emily suddenly puts him on the spot, asking if he still remembers the day they first crossed paths. Leon just smirks, telling her there's absolutely no way he'd ever forget a moment like that. She confessed that hugging anyone else feels totally wrong now, and because she's so desperate to stay by his side, she actually threw her entire career away. She's ditching her old life for a fresh start in a city where nobody knows her name, hoping the distance will finally help her wipe him from her memory. But first, she invites him out one last time to end their story on a high note. She let out a raw, soul-shattering scream, leaving Leon to wonder why she'd even asked her to tag along until the stinging truth finally hit him. She wasn't just trying to leave this city behind, she was trying to erase her entire past. She was dying to just scrub that entire night from her memory. But deep down, it's a moment she's way too attached to ever let go. Leon doesn't even blink, promising he'd relive that night 1,000 times over, if that's what she needs. He looked her dead in the eye and shouted for her to come along, and she was absolutely stoked that Leon was finally the one making the offer. He was acting way too casual with the group, but in his head, he wasn't buying it for a second. Even if it was a total lie, he should have at least told her to tag along. And believe me, he knows exactly what she's getting at. Emily flashed a cheeky grin, teasing him that the look was totally his style anyway. Leon felt the heat and immediately blurted out an apology. Wide-eyed and hopeful, the girl asked if she actually got to tag along. Leon didn't miss a beat, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Of course you can!" Emily puts Leon on the spot by reminding him he already promised to tag along, leaving a flustered Leon realizing he's gotta get Livia's seal of approval first. She screamed at him for being a total airhead, but Leon barely had time to dwell on it before a new day dawned, with him and Lydia officially breaking into the top 4. Lydia and our hero shared a massive, bone-crushing hug as he realized the final condition was locked in. The age of the sage was officially here. He flashes a wild grin and yells that it's time to move, while Lydia screams in pure relief that their nightmare is finally over. They're charging straight for the boss, and even though it's just the two of them, their confidence is through the roof now that Leon's finally unleashing his massive buffs in magic, senses, and raw physical power. Surrounded by a horde of monsters, Leon realized they could tap into the sage's power whenever they wanted, so he let it rip with a devastating explosive blade. The massive blast shredded the monsters, and Leon thrust his hand forward, roaring for his thunder bullet. Leon blasts the monsters, shredding through their defenses with his raw magical power. The enemy screams in pure terror, realizing there's absolutely no way to outrun Leon's reach. Just then, Lydia lunges from the shadows, blindsiding the beast with a lethal strike from behind. She slammed into the monster with devastating force, cleaving it clean in half to finish the job. Then Lydia beamed a joyful look at Leon, who couldn't help but smile back. They dove headfirst into the portal together, materializing right in front of the guild. Leon let out a sigh of relief, stoked to finally leave this city behind, and the girl just flashed him a huge, beaming smile. The group's dying to know when they're heading out, but Lydia just flashes a smirk and tells them to hold their horses. She's gonna need a few days of serious prep before they make their move. He totally gets it, but now he's got a burning question for you. Lydia leaned in, her curiosity instantly piqued. Leon dropped the bombshell. When it's time to head out, he's bringing them along for the ride. But out of nowhere, Lydia freezes in her tracks, demanding to know what the heck is going on over there. A massive crowd was burning holes through them, some staring dead on and others peeking from the shadows. So when Lydia whispered to ask if he noticed the audience, Leon coolly told her he felt every single gaze. He roared at the top of his lungs that Lydia was finally here, while the girls shrieked in shock that it was actually Ryan's brother. He gripped their shoulders tight, letting out a massive sigh of relief that they'd managed to make it back in one piece. He claims they've earned the right to sweep the top floor and asks what they're up to. but Lydia yells out with pride that the two of them have already conquered the entire royal tower through sheer, unmatched willpower. They're reeling from the pure shock of the victory they just snatched together. It's straight up mind-blowing, and they can barely wrap their heads around it. And let's be real, the princess is an absolute goddess, but her raw power is what really steals the show. He teased that the Red Magician had finally found a new crew to carry him after the Wolf Fangs, basically getting a free ride to the top, and Leon just shrugged, knowing that was exactly what you'd expect from a guy like him. No matter how cracked the Night Princess is, soloing this tower is a total suicide mission, so he knows teaming up with the Red Magician is their only real shot at reaching the top. He breaks down exactly how they pulled it off, but Lydia's too busy glaring at the crowd, sensing the suffocating tension in the room. She warns him that something massive just went down, and he grimly confirms that he's noticed it too. He's been lurking here just to get the real scoop, but he needs that report first. Meanwhile, Leon's just playing it cool, saying he's totally fine. The receptionist beams, telling them they crushed it as she clears their return through the upper floor teleporter and marks the mission complete, though Leon and his crew are still stuck at the same rank. As of today, Lydia has officially climbed the ladder to B rank. She couldn't contain her excitement and screamed for the whole world to hear that she finally got promoted. Leon chimed in right away, giving her a massive shout-out for the big achievement. But then they felt the eyes of the entire crowd on them, and things got real awkward, real fast. She quickly blurted out something else to try and break the tension. She dropped the bombshell that she'd already booked a mission for their legendary squad, leaving Leon totally stunned as he scrambled to find out what kind of insane job they were walking into. They're hit with a formal request to watch a high-stakes duel as observers, and the couple absolutely loses it, screaming in shock. Leon immediately demands to know who exactly is throwing down, while the employee frantically scans the paperwork one more time to make sure they didn't misread it. Rita and Maya's duel erupted into a breathtaking, swirling storm of blooming flowers. Leon stood there completely paralyzed with shock, shouting out to ask what the heck they were even doing. Meanwhile, Lydia was practically vibrating with excitement, dying to know exactly what was going on. Leon strides into the restaurant where the bartender drops a bombshell. They actually held a duel to crown a new leader for the first time in ages. But Leon just smirks, noting that word of the chaos travels fast. The entire city was absolutely buzzing with the news, and as they watched a crowd obsessing over Maya and Rita's duel, Leon could only awkwardly admit that the hype had officially taken over. Just as he was about to take a bite, yesterday's conversation came rushing back. The guild employee's warning echoed in his head. It was all going down tomorrow afternoon. Leon was absolutely floored by the news. The whole showdown is going down on the tower's first floor. And while Leon expected a simple duel between Rita and Maya, he never in a million years saw this coming. Maya just threw down the gauntlet against Rita, and Ryan didn't hesitate to shout, "It's on," putting the entire leadership of the Lily Garden on the line while a hyped-up Lydia demanded to know why he was even jumping into this mess. Everything he's doing is for his little sister, and when she asks what he means, he just tells her she's known the truth all along. It was a total lock that the Lily Garden leader would take her place at the top. But if even Rita, the absolute monster who dominated the Queen's Tower, was ready to throw in the towel, then you knew things were getting serious. He invited his sister to tag along, and honestly, that was all the motivation he needed to jump headfirst into the action. Leon then awkwardly chimed in, pointing out that Mr. Ryan is way too overprotective for his own good. But what happens if they flat out refuse to be his witnesses? Ryan just brushes it off, telling them he can handle the fallout all by himself. It was his ultimate safety net just in case they didn't make it back before the duel officially kicked off. They were more than ready to handle whatever came their way. The bartender confessed he never imagined he'd be a front-row witness to such a wild scene. This entire disaster was all thanks to the chaotic management shakeup. Leon pours a drink and asks if they're brawling over him, but the guy hyped up says not a chance. So Leon just slams his glass back. The guild has a zero-tolerance policy on brawling to keep the hotheads from starting a total riot. But since some beef just can't be settled with words, they settle the score with official duels. Standing right before the tower's gates, he realizes everything's going down in the first-floor hall. a zone the guild keeps under total lockdown for two major reasons. First, he analyzed his combat techniques, and since his class blessings were working just as well as his other powers, he was all set, until a sudden loud "Good morning" caught him completely off guard. Leah and her brother are greeted by a beaming Leon, but Ryan's got a surprise guest in tow, a priest from his own army who's officially joining their squad today. He flashed a grin, knowing he could stitch up any injury as long as they still had a pulse. Leon was convinced that no matter how brutal the damage, the tower would wipe it away in a heartbeat. Shaking off the tension, Leon awkwardly called out to Ryan. When asked about the witnesses, Ryan made it clear that the guildmaster is the one running the show, and with everyone finally locked in and ready to rumble, it's officially time to get this duel started. Leon spotted Maya across the arena looking absolutely locked in, tightening her gear and snapping on her gloves as she prepped for the showdown. He squares up against the girl, who's just standing there with a smug grin, totally ready for the duel to kick off. She isn't sweating this fight for a single second. The crowd is absolutely losing it, roaring at the top of their lungs as they cheer on their favorite fighters. He saw right through his next move. The girl locked eyes with him and flashed a grin. She let out a massive, soul-crushing sigh. Realizing she was stuck, she put on a brave face to pretend everything was totally normal. The witness finally makes a grand entrance, and with the terms laid bare, it's a total knockout battle where if Maya wins, Rita is officially surrendering her crown as the head of the Lily Garden. He flashes a wicked grin, declaring that if Rita wins, their wish is as good as dead. He asks if they're cool with those stakes, and while Maya forces out a tense yes, Rita just beams and says, "You bet." The official locked eyes with Leon and declared that, by the witness's command, the duel was finally going down. He took a sharp breath and thrust his hand high into the air. He roared at the top of his lungs for them to get ready for battle. They dropped into their combat stances and white-knuckled their blades as Leon let the tension simmer in silence, only to suddenly roar the signal and chop his hand down to ignite the fuse. She kicked off the ground and rocketed toward Maya at insane speeds. Even with that massive shield, she was moving like a total blur. She put her entire weight behind the blow and slammed her hammer down with everything she had. He stared at her, his jaw hitting the floor in pure disbelief. The crowd erupted into a deafening roar, everyone holding their breath for the chaos about to unfold. Rita whipped her head toward where Maya had just been standing, but she had vanished into thin air. Right behind Rita, a shadow looms. She sneaks in close, leveling a lethal blade at her blind spot. But Rita catches the faint rustle and whips around in a heartbeat. She slams her shield up just in time to tank the strike. He swung that hammer with lethal force, but she slipped away just in time. Maya launched her counter next, only for Rita to slam her shield up to block it, while Ryan watched the madness and asked if they even realized how deep they were really in. Look, as long as there's a pulse, magic can patch up any wound. But once someone kicks the bucket, it's game over. Resurrection is still way out of reach. Lydia and Ryan are sweating bullets, and for good reason. Between Rita's bone-crushing hammer and Maya's lethal neck strikes, it's obvious these two are playing for keeps. They swarm her from every single angle at once. Rita's head is spinning, completely unable to track where she'll land next. The girl triggers her power, blurring into the chaos in a total flash. She threw up a guard at the absolute last second, and as the blows rained down, Maya slipped away every single time, grinning like a maniac about just how quirky she really is. He admitted that the assassin girl was actually a total beast. It looks like even the legendary Rita is finally feeling the heat. She's handling that insane storm of attacks like an absolute pro. He never imagined she could pull off those blindingly fast moves while decked out in full armor. Gritting her teeth in pure fury, she refused to slow down, completely ignoring the nasty gash across her cheek that was nowhere near enough to stop her. Maya is absolutely floored by Rita's skills. But Leon explains that thanks to her blessing of the armed warrior, Rita's skin is basically as tough as chainmail, meaning Maya's hits have to be insanely powerful to actually make her bleed. She skidded to a halt, gasping for air as her lungs burned. She was absolutely drenched in sweat after that frantic display of speed. Rita just stared her down with a cold intensity, but strangely, she still hadn't made her move. Maya's going for broke, hammering away at Rita's defense with everything she's got. She's clearly stacking multiple skills to force a breakthrough, but it's absolutely shredding her stamina. Everything on the inside just crumbled. The girl shook off the shock and bolted straight for Rita. Lydia screamed in pure terror as Mrs. Maya started to vanish, but Leon roared back, telling her she was dead wrong. It came lunging from the right. Rita's completely blindsided by the ambush, but she knows she's got to finish this right here, right now. She whips around, swinging her hammer to block the strike, but Maya's already diving back in for another hit. He's screaming at the top of his lungs because she vanished into thin air, yet again. Meanwhile, Lydia's eyes are locked onto the girls, tracking every single move. Rita swings with everything she's got, but the girl just dances right out of the way. He's losing his mind because she just won't stay down. But she stares at her battered body and roars that no matter how many scars she takes, she's not losing this fight. The crowd watched them like hawks, eyes glued to every move. Everyone held their breath, dying to see what would happen next. Rita locked in, tracking the sound of Maya's footsteps closing in. She whipped around instantly, screaming for her to take the hit. She slammed the hammer down with everything she had, making Maya shriek in pure agony. She gets sent flying across the battlefield before slamming violently into the ground. Maya's friend lets out a gut-wrenching scream, crying out that she's been hit. Rita and Leon are left completely speechless, staring at her in absolute shock. Maya somehow forces herself to sit up, her breath coming in heavy, ragged gasps. She clutched her chest, coughing violently as she struggled to catch her breath. Her friend tried to bolt to her side, but hands grabbed her, pinning her in place. She screamed at the top of her lungs, begging them to let her go so she could save Maya. Things are reaching a boiling point, and it's finally time to crown the winner. Leon lets out a wild cheer, but Maya quickly tells him to pipe down. She insisted she could still fight. But Ryan snapped, screaming at her to stop being so reckless, because if she kept this up, she was as good as dead. Maya's standing there with a massive hammer, looking ready to drop the boom. She's staring her down with lethal intensity, just waiting for the perfect opening. Maya reaches for her dagger, but her hands are shaking so hard she can barely even hold on to the blade. She slammed her shield into the dirt, flashing a smirk as she mocked herself for being such a total idiot. She started stalking toward Maya, who could only stare back with intense focus. The crowd is losing their minds with excitement, totally clueless about the drama, as Maya screams for her to stay back. But Rita just lunges forward, pulls her into a desperate embrace, and refuses to let go. She snapped in a total rage, leveling her blade right at Rita's throat. The girl just stared back, asking if she really wanted her gone that badly. Maya locked eyes with her, and suddenly, the dam broke as she burst into tears. She broke down into the mess of tears, screaming her heart out as she begged for forgiveness. Maya let her guard down at last, letting her dagger clatter onto the cold ground. The brutal struggle was finally over, and miraculously, everyone was still standing. She claimed a single apology could have stopped this whole disaster, but Maya just snapped, screaming that her sister would have been a legendary hero if she hadn't ruined everything. Rita grabs her by the shoulders and demands to know whoever said she wanted to be a hero, but Maya shoots back that if they were just stronger, they could control the blooming flowers themselves, and she'd finally get to head out on an adventure with Leon. She grilled the guy about what this meant for Leon, but since it didn't sound half bad, Rita just flashed him a grin that made him jump before pivoting her focus right back to Maya. Flashing a massive grin, she promised to stay by their side, and in that beautiful moment, the team's bond finally blossomed into something truly special. This is exactly why she wants to stay here forever. But as Rita pulls her into a desperate hug and screams for forgiveness, she has no clue that an apology was the last thing on Rita's mind. After a quick pat on the head, Leon shared a smile with the beaming Lydia before thrusting his hand high and roaring that the fight was over. Rita had won. He rushed over, horrified at how badly she'd been trashed, while the girl winced, muttering that it must have been agonizing. She screamed that the leader was a total monster for being so ruthless, but Rita just shrugged, saying that holding back would have been a total insult to Maya's strength. He screamed at the doctor to quit stalling and save Maya before she bled out, and as the doc rushed in to patch her up, Lydia looked at her squad and called it a beautiful sight.